In the year 594 of the Saint calendar, the story began at the Kandria Arcanist Academy. When he arrived at the academy, the young man was amazed by how grand the place looked. A 13-year-old boy named Louis Kirill saw that a huge number of people were there for the exam. Suddenly, someone called out his name, and Louis turned around to see who it was. His mother, Luciella, and his father, Julian, ran up to him. They told him he was moving too fast and shouldn't leave them behind. His mother asked if he had his ID and the special hair dye to avoid attracting unwanted attention. She was worried because she had heard stories about students being removed from the academy for small reasons. Julian, however, believed that magic was the only solution to their son's problem. This academy was also the only one in the entire Northern Empire that allowed commoners to take its entrance exam. For them, the Kandria Academy was the best possible choice they had. The school was started by the royal family and was known as one of the 10 greatest academies in the empire. The most powerful grandmasters in the land taught their students everything they knew at this very academy. Over the past decade, many guardians who were not from noble families had come from such academies. A large number of these strong warriors had graduated from this specific school. Because of this, Julian was certain it was the perfect place for Louis to learn magic. His mother agreed with her husband, and Louis declared his own goal to become a grandmaster, no matter the cost. The young man explained that he wanted to become strong so he could take ownership of the church orphanage. His mother, Luciella, was shocked to see how determined her son was. She felt bad that she could not heal him, but Julian comforted her, reminding her that she already did more than enough. Louis told his mother that he was only alive because of her, and he was deeply thankful for everything she had done. His mind drifted to a past life, a time when even his own parents did not care for him. Even so, he had never given up on his love for martial arts and kept studying it. He eventually became a scholar whose research helped advance the world of fighting. However, another man stole his work and falsely accused him, claiming a sick person like him did not deserve any praise. In the end, his parents left him too. As he lay dying, his only wish was for a family that would truly love him. He had also wished to live his own life, and it seemed his dreams were finally coming true. The memory shifted to the past, where a young nun was unsure about taking in a small child. A baby, Louis, woke up confused as he thought he was gone. The woman worried he might bring misfortune. But she saw that the baby was innocent and could not leave him. She decided to name him Louis Kirill. Now in this life, he had a loving family and a healthy body, allowing him to live without limits. Back in the present moment, a noble pushed his mother aside, shouting for the commoner to move. Louis and Julian quickly ran to help Luciella, who had fallen to the ground. The noble then made fun of the boy's goal, saying a commoner could never hope to become a grandmaster. He acted disgusted, complaining that he had touched a filthy commoner and hoped it wouldn't bring him bad luck. Hearing these words, Louis filled with anger and prepared to strike the noble. But Julian quickly grabbed his son's arm, stopping him from doing anything rash. His father reminded him to focus on the exam, as that was what mattered most right now. His mother also reminded him of his promise not to start any trouble, and asked him to be patient. Listening to his parents, the boy calmed himself, but he was still very angry about what happened. He apologized to his mother, who placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. The nobles walked off, calling them trash as they went to get their registration numbers. Suddenly, the crowd began to move, with people shouting to make way for someone named Lord Kane. Kane Aranka, the heir of the Aranka family, appeared, and his noble presence impressed everyone around him. Louis watched Kane, who carried himself with an air of being better than everyone else, which annoyed Louis. With a determined look on his face, the young man made a silent promise to show all of those nobles what he was truly made of. He then turned to his mother and promised her that he would definitely pass the exam. The boy said with complete confidence that he would become a grandmaster and be better than everyone else. He was set on learning magic to prove his strength to the people who would look down on him. In this new life, he would become the strongest of all so he could protect the people he cared about. He looked at a picture of his family, vowing to himself that he would protect everything he held dear. His parents were worried. With 20,000 candidates this year, only 30 would be chosen to pass. But Julian knew his son was more stubborn than anyone and would not give up so easily. The father said that their job as a family was to support their son's choices. When they reached the exam area, Louis noticed that all the other candidates were older than he was. A man floated into the air and announced that the academy's entrance exam was about to start. He said his name was Aronian Smith, the director of the academy and the one in charge of the exam. The candidates were shocked that the director, a grandmaster himself, would be overseeing the test. In their world, there were 6 ranks for fighters and mages, from the lowest, apprentice, to the highest, saint. The rank of grandmaster was the 3rd highest, and anyone who held it was part of the upper class. The director pointed to a large staircase and explained that the first test was simply to climb it. He went on to say that those who passed this stage would have to get past the upperclassmen. There were only 1,000 passes available, and only those who grabbed one could move on to the next test. The moment the last pass was taken, the exam would be over for everyone else. With a loud shout, the director started the test, and all the candidates began to run. A few confident candidates yelled that the test would be easy and charged toward the upperclassmen. But an upperclassman greeted them with a dark smile, welcoming them to the test. A powerful red aura then exploded from his body. The force was so strong that for a moment everyone's vision blurred. The candidates were caught off guard and were left confused about what had just happened. Right away, many registration numbers were called out, disqualifying a large group of candidates at the same time. The remaining candidates wondered fearfully if they had just been attacked, and they recognized the upperclassmen. Louis realized that what he had just felt was a pure, overwhelming intent to cause harm. The other candidates were still confused, unable to understand what had taken place. Then, Louis explained to those nearby that it was not an attack, but the man's powerful aura. The upperclassman was using his aura to scare all of the candidates at once. Louis understood that anyone with a weak mind would not be able to handle such intense pressure. Many of the weaker candidates had fainted simply from the sheer terror they felt. The upperclassman then looked at Louis and noted that he seemed to have some courage. But he added that there was no place for commoners here, as there were already many talented people. Louis was not scared and looked back at the upperclassman as an equal, showing his bravery. With a challenging expression, the upperclassman said that since the boy was still standing, he would see what he could do. He then promised to force the boy to his knees. At that, the other candidates cried out in pain, begging for the pressure to stop. But Louis remained standing, completely unaffected by the upperclassman's powerful aura. With a small smile, Louis asked if this was the full extent of the man's intimidating power. For Louis, this was nothing, as he had faced far worse threats in his past. The boy had trained by fighting against countless beasts and monsters. Facing the killing intent of wild creatures was a normal part of his daily training. This was why the upperclassman's aura had no effect on him at all. The upperclassman was stunned to see that his aura had no effect on the boy. With a confident smile, the young man told him that his intimidation would not work. Then, Louis prepared to show him what a true killing intent felt like. The boy was ready to show all the nobles a real display of power and rushed toward the stairs. He was about to teach them the meaning of true fear. His own aura exploded outwards, filling the area with immense force and pressure. The other nobles watching from the side were completely shocked by the boy's strength. Even the upperclassman was terrified by the incredible pressure he felt, crushing his body. Louis's fist flew toward the upperclassman's face, who was frozen in fear. But just before it made contact, Louis stopped his punch. He then stared down at the terrified noble. The upperclassman was completely stunned and speechless at the power the boy had just shown. The other candidates wondered how a simple commoner could not only resist, but also challenge an upperclassman. Ignoring the confused crowd, Louis simply walked past the noble to continue the test. The boy walked up to the board where the passes were hanging and got ready to take one. He reached out his hand and took one of the admission passes. But the upperclassman refused to accept his defeat and yelled angrily that he would not let this go. Filled with rage, the noble charged at Louis with all his might, unleashing his energy. Seeing the attack coming toward him, the young man prepared to counter it with his own full strength. The two powerful attacks then crashed into each other. The noble was shocked that a mere commoner had blocked his attack without using any magic. The director suddenly appeared and stopped the upperclassman, stating that the boy had passed the first test. He scolded the noble, reminding him that the academy must treat all candidates equally. The upperclassman bowed in apology and thanked the director for his guidance. Aronian then congratulated Louis Carril for passing the first part of the exam. Then, he noticed the boy's hair color and mentioned that it was a little concerning. The young man was puzzled by the director's words and asked him to explain. The director's expression turned serious as he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, looking at him with intensity. He then offered the boy a special potion, saying it would hide his unique traits. Though he did not understand the director's plan, the young man decided to concentrate on the next part of the exam. He turned and walked away, heading toward the site of the academy's second test. As Louis left, the upperclassman watched him go, his eyes filled with hatred. He could not understand why the director had protected a commoner, and he vowed to remember the boy's name. When he arrived at the location for the second test, a voice announced that the exam would start soon. Only 1,000 candidates were left out of the original 20,000, most of them nobles from high-class families. A group of nobles then walked past the protagonist, their faces showing only arrogance and scorn. One of the nobles stopped to threaten him, promising that no one would be there to help him next time. The young man was not bothered by the threat and simply stared back with a cold, challenging look. The noble kept mocking him, saying he had only passed thanks to the director's help. A small smile appeared on the young man's face as he called the noble a complete idiot. The noble was stunned and furious at such a bold and unexpected reply. Louis calmly explained that the Grandmaster's judgment was far better than theirs. Filled with anger, the noble stepped closer and asked if he wanted to be beaten then and there. The protagonist just smiled with confidence, ready to accept the noble's challenge. Blinded by his fury, the noble prepared to strike the boy with all his might. He shouted that he would finish the commoner as he lunged forward, his fist aimed right at Louis's face. But the young man remained perfectly calm. In a quick motion, he readied a finger strike aimed at a vital point. His fingers met the noble's fist, stopping its movement completely in mid-air. The noble was filled with terror when he realized his body was frozen and would not move. The young man had used a special technique to block the noble's energy flow, causing the paralysis. With one final push, he sent the noble flying backward as his friends watched in disbelief. The noble's friends cried out, unable to believe he had been defeated so easily. His body slammed into the ground with a loud thud, shocking everyone who was watching. The other candidates stared in shock, struggling to understand the commoner's incredible strength. One of his friends rushed to his side and asked if he was all right, but the noble could only complain of the pain. He cried out in fear, saying he could no longer feel his own arm. He then realized he could not move his right arm at all. Burning with rage, he accused the protagonist of using poison and threatened to report him. But the hero corrected him, explaining that it was not poison but a martial arts technique. The boy said he had tried to hold back as his mother had asked, but he had limits. He added that people should only throw a punch if they are ready to receive one. Suddenly, another boy named Kane grabbed the protagonist's arm. He reminded him that they were in the middle of an important exam. Kane asked if he was willing to be disqualified for fighting. The young man looked at Kane for a moment, thinking about what he had just done. The other nobles shouted at Kane to stay out of it and began threatening the young man again. Kane turned to face them, asking if they knew who he was before telling them to leave. The nobles were clearly frightened and decided it was best to forget the fight and walk away. The group turned and left the area, leaving the trouble behind them for now. Before he left, the defeated noble sneered that commoners were trash and told Louis to remember it. The protagonist thought to himself that all nobles were the same, always using their power to get what they wanted. Kane then approached him with a compliment, saying he was strong and brave for standing up to them. The blonde noble smiled and held out his hand, suggesting they team up for the next test. Just then, a group of girls appeared, asking if Lord Kane needed any partners. A crowd quickly gathered around him, with everyone begging to be on his team. The other candidates knew that being on his team meant an easy pass, since he was from the famous Aranca family. Louis paid no attention to the commotion, his face completely uninterested. At that moment, a huge magic circle glowing with blue energy appeared in the middle of the arena. The director appeared, floating in the air, and congratulated them for passing the test of willpower. He smiled and announced that the next phase would be a test of their power. Suddenly, glowing marks appeared on the chests of every candidate, leaving them confused. Kane was startled when he saw that the mark on his own body was an earth symbol. The blonde boy was completely shocked and could not understand what was happening. His body suddenly felt heavy, and he nearly fell to the ground like many of the other candidates. Then, a massive golden magic circle lit up the entire floor of the arena. The director explained that the second exam would be a battle while under the effects of his powerful earth magic. The nobles began to complain, saying it was impossible to fight while a grandmaster's magic was pressing down on them. One of them then pointed in shock towards someone who was walking as if nothing was wrong. It was Kane, who was managing to stay on his feet despite the immense magical pressure. Straining with effort, he looked ahead and was surprised by what he saw. The person he saw was Louis, who was walking easily through the heavy magical pressure. The young man stepped onto the main stage, which shocked every other candidate there. The director smiled at the boy, noting that he was the first one to arrive yet again. The others recognized him and were stunned that he could handle such intense pressure. Kane himself could barely stand and wondered how the commoner was moving so easily. The director then announced that only those who remained standing could take part in the next test. With a wave of his hand, the Grandmaster prepared to summon something into the arena. An array of weapons appeared, and he told the candidates to choose whichever one they wanted. With a swift and steady motion, the boy's hand closed around the hilt of the sword. He then swung the sword through the air, showing he was ready for the fight to come. The other candidates struggled just to lift their weapons, and the director gave one last warning. He asked if they were all ready, and then gave the signal for the final exam to begin. A smile crossed the director's face as he ordered the release of the bonded slimes. The candidates looked around in confusion, seeing nothing new in the arena. They wondered what bonded slimes were, but no one seemed to have an answer. The protagonist, however, noticed something and looked up to the sky with a sharp gaze. Suddenly, many blue spheres began to fall from the sky toward the candidates. One of the spheres hit the ground and changed into a strange blue creature. Everyone then realized that these creatures were the slimes the director had spoken of. The rules were simple: 1 point for blocking an attack, 2 for dodging, and 5 for defeating a slime. The director explained that the ranking would be based on points, and only the top 100 would pass. The protagonist considered how difficult the test would be since only 100 people could pass. A giant slime suddenly screamed and began shooting out smaller copies of itself in every direction. One of the candidates laughed, saying that slimes were weak monsters and would be easy to beat. With a confident smile, the young noble moved forward with his sword, ready to claim an easy 5 points. He ran at full speed toward one of the small creatures, shouting for it to face his attack. But the small blue creature's expression suddenly changed, and it gave off a powerful and threatening feeling. The little monster then shot forward with incredible speed, right at the candidate who had misjudged it. The noble's confidence vanished, replaced by pure panic as he saw the creature's true power. Before he could react, the slime slammed into his face, sending him flying backward. The other candidates watched in shock, finally understanding the real danger of this test. More slimes began to fly across the arena, catching everyone else by surprise. The nobles were terrified by the surprising strength of the small blue creatures. One of the boys yelled for everyone to be careful as even more slimes rained down from the sky. The arena turned into a chaotic battlefield, filled with explosions as candidates were thrown through the air. Chaos ruled the field, and many participants were quickly defeated by the slime attacks. From above, the examiners started to announce the scores of the candidates who were able to fight back. An examiner remarked to the director that many nobles from famous families were participating this year. She thought that because of them, a new record might be set as the battle raged on below. Another examiner noted that there were also some excellent commoners, mentioning the boy the director had helped. The director smiled, saying the boy was interesting and might do something amazing. But the other examiner looked concerned by what he was seeing in the arena. He pointed out that the young man had not moved at all since the test began. A nearby noble scoffed at the protagonist, saying the slimes were too fast for a commoner. He added that a commoner would always be a commoner, and would surely be defeated soon. Just then, a slime launched itself straight toward the hero. The attack moved quickly, but the boy stayed perfectly still, showing no reaction at all. With a calm expression, the boy moved aside to avoid the attack. He dodged with a simple shift of his body, leaving his opponent in shock. The noble who challenged him could not believe it, and wondered how he did it. But the attacks continued, as another slime flew across the arena. This slime struck a different participant, sending the person flying from the force of the blow. The boy's face became serious as he braced himself for what was coming next. All at once, many slimes started to fall from above, right on top of him. The noble who had challenged him smiled, thinking there was no way the boy could dodge so many. The protagonist closed his eyes and focused, trying to feel where the attacks were going. His mind then went back to one of the hardest training sessions of his past. In his memory, he stood in a snowy field with his training partners. They held heavy rocks and spoke of how much it would hurt to be hit by one. But the boy told them it was fine because he wanted to try something new. His friends then shouted for him to be careful and threw the rocks with all their strength. A shower of rocks soared through the air at great speed, aimed right at him. His eyes began to glow with a blue energy as he focused completely on the rocks. He recalled a new idea that he had come up with in his past life. The boy had trained his brain to send information about what he saw directly to the part that controlled movement. If he could figure out where things were going and react instantly, he could handle any attack. Back in his training memory, the boy began to process the information of each rock. Once he had the information, the next part was to figure out the path each one would take. The final part was to simply move his body just enough to avoid every single one. His friends were completely amazed by the incredible skill he had just shown. The boy wiped away his sweat, thinking to himself that his new power was amazing. His friends ran to him, asking how he did that and saying it was very cool. He explained that the skill was called void combat calculation, which left them confused. The young man said it was a technique that could predict the end of any battle. Back in the present, the boy was surrounded by slime attacks in the exam arena. His eyes glowed as he got ready to use his skill to predict all the attacks. Formulas and numbers appeared in his mind as he calculated everything perfectly. The path of every monster was analyzed at an unbelievable speed. In the middle of it all, the protagonist got ready to show what he could truly do. He saw that the slimes were fast and strong but could only attack in a straight line. Using this knowledge, the boy calculated the angle and speed to predict where they would all go. Then, Louis started to move around the arena with impressive and exact speed. The young man dodged all the attacks easily, thinking it was simple. He had already scored 8 points from 4 dodges and was ready for the next step. The protagonist then held his sword tightly and prepared to fight back. With a determined look, he thought that it was finally his turn to attack the monsters. The boy swung his sword and defeated several slimes at the same time. Kane, who was watching nearby, was stunned by the commoner's ability. The examiners were also surprised and talked about the boy's amazing perception. One of them said the young man's senses were as sharp as a veteran fighter's. Seeing this, Kane smiled and decided that he must team up with that boy. Suddenly, the protagonist felt something and noticed a new attack coming for him. He turned and saw another slime rushing toward him at full speed. The boy prepared to gain another 5 points by using his piercing attack. With a fast and sure movement, he lunged forward to strike the monster in its center, but at the last second, someone got in the way, and he turned, annoyed, asking who stole his target. It was Kane, who smiled and said the target he stole was not the protagonist's. The blonde noble then turned, and, with a graceful swing of his sword, he attacked. With one clean strike, he sliced the slime in half and defeated the small creature. Meanwhile, the other candidates were still fighting for their lives against the blue monsters. Kane then explained that he stole the target from those other candidates, not from him. He introduced himself as Kane and invited the boy to steal points from others with him. The protagonist looked at the noble with a serious and suspicious expression. Kane said he only wanted a high score and suggested a contest between them. With a challenging smile, he asked the boy to show him his real power. The young man smiled with confidence and agreed, since the noble insisted. With that, he gripped his sword tighter, ready for their competition to start. Louis then proposed that the loser must do whatever the winner commands, which surprised Kane. The two stood back to back, ready to finally begin their big contest. A group of archers saw that the two had joined forces and spotted a chance to attack. The leader of the archers smiled darkly and got ready to attack the pair. Suddenly, a slime was thrown in their direction, which surprised everyone. The leader shouted for his friends to get ready and pulled back his bowstring. Just then, a ball of blue energy flew toward the competing pair. The protagonist noticed the attack, and his eyes glowed with his special power. He moved in a flash, standing in front of Kane to block the blow. But that was not all, as several arrows were also shot right at them. They struck the protagonist. Kane stared in shock as he watched Louis shield him with his own body. The archer smiled with confidence, believing his attack was a perfect hit. But the protagonist just let out a small laugh, showing he was not hurt at all. As the dust cleared, the archer was speechless at what he saw. It turned out that Louis had caught the arrows easily with his bare hands. The nobles were scared and wondered how a commoner could have reacted so fast. Kane asked if he was okay, but the boy just said that those attacks were nothing. The noble archer grew angry and shouted to his friends to aim for Kane instead. The archer readied a special move called Double Arrow, which had a wicked energy. 2 arrows flew at high speed toward the duo, and one of them was magical. The young noble tried to block it but knew the attack was too strong for him. The arrow with the dark energy moved with truly amazing speed and force. The blonde boy was frozen with fear as he watched the magic arrow about to strike him. Suddenly, a red line appeared in the air, showing that the attack had hit someone. Louis moved in front of the noble once more, catching an arrow with his bare hand. A worried Kane checked on his hand, but Louis explained that the arrow was actually meant for him. The examiners saw the attack's malicious intent, and one of them suggested the attackers should be disqualified. The director disagreed, certain the attackers would lose anyway. He told his staff to get healing potions ready. Back in the arena, Louis asked for the noble's name, which was Kane, and told him it was time to fight back. Smiling, Louis gripped his sword like a baseball bat and asked Kane if he had ever heard of the game. He then swung his sword, hitting a small slime and sending it flying toward the enemy archers. A special ability allowed him to calculate the perfect path for his unusual projectile. His eyes began to glow with a blue light as he prepared to swing with all his strength. Louis then swung the sword hard, striking the slime just like a batter hitting a baseball. The creature soared across the arena at incredible speed, heading straight for the group of archers. The archers looked up in horror, realizing the slime was coming right at them. It struck their leader directly in the head, the impact sending him flying backward. His teammates were caught in the resulting blast, and they too were thrown into the spectator stands. The noble leader landed hard on the ground, completely defeated and thus disqualified from the exam. Louis celebrated his first point while Kane watched on, intrigued by the commoner's strange fighting style. The 2 remaining archers were furious about their leader's defeat and yelled out in anger. One looked around in confusion, wondering where Louis had suddenly vanished to. Kane then appeared above them, catching one noble's attention and telling him to look up. Meanwhile, Louis was already lining up another shot with a second slime, ready to score again. The blue slime hit the second archer squarely in the face, giving him no time to react. The force of the blow disqualified him as well, sending him flying far away. The final noble began to panic, unable to believe what was happening before his eyes. Louis suddenly appeared behind him with a smile, telling him he was the last one left. The noble made a threat, warning that his upper-class allies would not forgive this humiliation. Just then, Kane stepped on the noble's foot, making him stumble as if by accident. As the noble lay on the ground, Kane smiled and told him to be more careful. Kane then thanked Louis for his help and asked if his hand was alright after catching the arrow. They shook hands, and Louis commented that Kane was decent for a high-ranking noble. The blonde noble told him not to group him with the others, revealing he was from the Oranka family. The great families were known as powerful clans that produced many grand masters. Louis realized that not all nobles were the same as the 2 of them continued to fight side by side. Another group of candidates became angry, noticing a commander interfering in the fight. They shouted that they would not allow the pair to score any more points. In response, both Louis and Kane prepared for the next fight, unleashing powerful auras. The nobles charged forward, yelling that the commoner should be eliminated from their world. A different group of candidates noticed that Lord Kane was the primary target of the attack. They decided to help the noble heir and charged at the attackers. The arena erupted into a chaotic battlefield, and Kane warned Louis to be careful. A red-haired girl and a small, blue-haired girl watched from the sidelines, noting that things were getting interesting. The redhead called out to the blue-haired girl, Miliana, telling her to make the nobles regret looking down on them. Louis realized he was now a target for many others, which would make scoring more difficult. He turned and was surprised to see that several new slimes had suddenly appeared in the arena. Miliana used her staff to trip one of the candidates, causing him to fall to the ground. At the same time, the red-haired girl used her weapon to unleash a powerful attack that hit multiple enemies. A red-haired boy carrying a giant hammer suddenly appeared, having already defeated several opponents by himself. He grinned and shouted that the chaotic battle was great fun. He declared that fighting people was far more exciting than fighting weak slimes. With a loud yell, the redhead began to spin his massive hammer with all his strength. He spun faster and faster, preparing to release a powerful move. His eyes began to glow as he yelled for everyone to get out of his way. He unleashed his attack, a wide spinning motion that sent all nearby candidates flying. After the chaos settled, the redhead stood still with the hammer resting on his shoulder, looking triumphant. Many candidates were now scattered on the ground, defeated and unable to continue. An examiner asked if they should stop the match, but the director was pleased with the candidates' energy. Another instructor, however, worried about the high number of nobles being disqualified. The director insisted they follow the academy's rules and not worry about outside opinions. He then stepped into the arena himself to signal that the exam was officially over. The director announced to everyone that the second exam had concluded. He added that the final scores and rankings would be posted soon. As the exam ended, the earth magic that formed the arena faded, and one exhausted noble collapsed. Examiners moved through the crowd, handing out healing potions to the injured candidates. Louis accepted a potion and was impressed by the powerful energy he could feel coming from it. Kane walked over and asked what was on Louis's mind, seeing him lost in thought. Kane told him to relax, but also warned that he would not go easy on Louis, even if he won their bet. The director called for everyone's attention, ready to announce the results of the second exam. He summoned a large, magical scroll, and Kane asked Louis where he thought he had placed. Other nobles mocked Louis, but the revealed list only showed the rankings down to 6th place. The director announced that the top 5 had broken records, with Miliana Royce taking 5th place. To the surprise of the crowd, Kane was announced as 4th place. The confident, red-haired girl, Faye Durhan, was revealed to be in 3rd place. Louis began to wonder if he had been disqualified for his aggressive attacks on the other nobles. 2nd place was announced, and it was a boy named Louis Kirill with 887 points. Kane was completely shocked. He wondered who that boy was, as he had never seen him before. The blonde noble then remembered the boy was the commoner from earlier. When asked about it, the young man simply said it was a secret. Kane accepted his defeat in their bet. Louis said he would tell him what he wanted to know after the exam was over. With that out of the way, it was time for the glorious first place winner to be announced to everyone. Taking first place with a record score of 888 points was Neil Gunn. The redhead smiled, noting that there were interesting people around. He hoped they would not disappoint him. The others were shocked to see 2 newcomers at the top, commenting on how strong Neil was. Meanwhile, Miliana watched Faye, who stood perfectly still while holding her enormous spear. The red-haired girl then declared that she would love to have a battle against the first-place winner. A group of nobles was angry, having lost to mere commoners in the competition. One of them shouted out, calling the commoners a complete disgrace to the nobility of the empire. An instructor informed the director that this was the first time commoners from an orphanage had placed so high. With a serious expression, the director asked if the instructor knew why the association took care of orphans. It was because true strength has nothing to do with a person's social status. The director then instructed everyone who passed the second exam to move to the next location. Kane commented that Louis had come very close to first place, but the boy simply replied that he did not know. The candidates arrived in a forest, where they learned the third and final exam would take place. The director appeared, floating in the air, and announced that the final test would be an emblem battle royale. He explained that emblems would be distributed, and upperclassmen would hide them throughout the forest. The objective for everyone was to collect as many emblems as possible, using any method they wished. Anyone who lost their own emblem would be disqualified. Only the top 10 finishers would be admitted. Kane suggested they split up. He warned Louis that those with the highest ranks would be the primary targets. The protagonist then realized the rankings had been announced for the specific purpose of creating this situation. With a smile, the director told them to demonstrate their skills and survive until the very end. The boy was determined to win no matter what, as admission into the academy was now very close. Suddenly, someone approached him from behind, calling him a commoner in a taunting voice. It was one of the nobles he had defeated earlier, who was there to get revenge for his humiliation. The protagonist, however, just stared back at the noble with a cold and unfazed expression. The noble sneered that Kane was not there to protect him, and that no one would help him this time. Just then, the young man noticed something was wrong. He turned his head with an alert expression. He saw that he was now surrounded by several other nobles, all of them ready to attack. The boy understood at once. The examiners must have deliberately leaked his location to the others. The lead noble grew tired of talking and lunged at Louis with his large axe. He shouted for the commoner to receive his blow. As Louis prepared to fight back, another noble shouted that he would not escape and attacked with his spear. Suddenly, 2 more nobles joined in, throwing their spears toward him with all their might. The boy was knocked to the ground, but he quickly recovered and sensed a new danger approaching. With a quick spin in the air, the young man used his sword to create a slash of energy to defend himself. Louis landed back on the ground, wondering what that was. He had felt a different kind of energy in that last attack. The group's leader shouted for him to just give up, telling the young man he would meet his end right there. Even at a disadvantage, the hero dodged every blow with impressive agility. He continued to defend himself against the onslaught of enemy attacks. The protagonist realized more attacks were coming and prepared himself for the next wave. His sword began to fill with power as the boy concentrated, the battle growing more intense. One of the nobles shouted for him to receive his attack, lunging forward with a powerful strike from his weapon. The weapon transformed into a wind arrow. The noble wondered how a commoner could possibly deal with magic, but Louis dodged it once again, and the noble grew angry that he kept escaping all their attacks. The boy realized he could not calculate the path of magical attacks the way he could with normal ones. With a determined look, he decided that he would have to change his strategy. He would use sen no sen, a technique that allowed him to counterattack before the enemy's blow could land. His eyes began to glow as the young man decided to use his enemies' own power against them. Seeing their hesitation, the group's leader shouted for everyone to stop wasting time and attack all at once. At his command, all the nobles charged toward the hero together with their weapons drawn. But the protagonist only gave a confident smile, for he already had a plan to defeat them all. With a confident smile, the young man noted that the timing was perfect to begin his counterattack. The noble with the axe celebrated, thinking he had finally managed to corner the protagonist. He brought his axe down with full force, but the boy dodged the blow with a quick and precise movement. Using his sword, the young man blocked the axe, preparing to use the enemy's own force to his advantage. The noble was shocked to feel his weapon being thrown aside with an impressive amount of force. The redirected axe then hit another noble who had been attacking Louis from behind. One of them screamed in pain as a spear, sent flying in the confusion, hit him in the eyes. From the top of the tree, another noble launched a powerful green energy attack in his direction. But in the blink of an eye, the protagonist appeared right behind the attacker, much to his surprise. The boy then used the noble as a shield, and the magic arrow hit him head-on, causing great damage. The noble fell to the ground, defeated and furious, as the young man picked up a spear to continue the fight. With the new weapon in hand, the protagonist prepared to show off his skills with the spear. He then threw the weapon with incredible force toward another enemy. The spear hit a nearby tree, and the resulting explosion sent the noble flying. The boy then began moving at high speed, easily defeating the remaining nobles. After he defeated them all, the nobles' emblems flew up into the sky as a reward for his victory. With a quick movement, the protagonist caught the emblems in the air and held them firmly in his hand. He turned to his defeated opponents and announced he would be taking their emblems as his prize. Suddenly, a stronger-looking noble appeared, shouting for the others to attack with their full magic power. But to everyone's surprise, Cain appeared. He asked if the noble had been talking to him. Louis was surprised by the sudden turn of events. Cain then said it was a shame the noble would no longer be able to use magic during the exam. Shocked, the man asked why Cain was there, since his friends were supposed to be keeping him busy. The blonde boy explained that he made them tell him the entire plan, adding that they had underestimated the Aranka family. Full of rage, the noble shouted that he did not care and would finish both of them off anyway. But before he could do anything, a crossbow bolt struck him right in the chest. The protagonist turned to Cain, relieved that he was there and safe with him. Cain dismissed them as low-level nobles and offered the emblems he had collected to the hero. He asked if the boy needed help, but Louis declined, saying he preferred to solve his own problems. Suddenly, a girl appeared, clapping her hands. She said that this was a guy she could finally acknowledge. A red-haired girl approached them. With a serious look, she challenged the young man to a fight. Cain explained that she was Faye Durahan. She was the powerful daughter of one of the Empire's grandmasters. The young man asked Cain if she was his friend. The noble denied it, stating that the girl was no friend of his. He admitted to fighting her before, but had let his guard down. Louis guessed that meant he had lost the fight. The girl grew annoyed by their conversation. Cain suggested it was best to ignore her so they could collect more emblems. Hearing this, she called them cowards. She asked if they were running away because they knew they could not win. With that, Louis accepted her challenge. He said he wanted to see how an heir of a great family fights. The red-haired girl smiled. To be fair, she declared she would fight without using any magic. Faye then lunged forward with a jump. She prepared her special attack, the crushing holy spear. The boy's eyes glowed with a blue energy as he readied himself for combat. He managed to block the powerful attack from Faye's spear with a precise and quick movement. The girl was surprised. A smile appeared on her face as she complimented her opponent's incredible skill. He complimented her in return, saying she was very good. He gripped his weapon firmly. Faye wasted no time and began to spin her spear with great speed. At the same time, the young man disengaged from the weapon to avoid being cut. With a shout, the red-haired girl urged the fight onward and advanced with another powerful attack. She then leaped into the air, preparing to use her holy spear technique once more. The attack struck the ground and caused a huge explosion, but the boy managed to dodge just in time. From a distance, two examiners watched the explosion. They commented on the intensity of the battle. One of them noted that her speed and power were perfect, just as expected from a fighting genius. The other, however, said the commoner was impressive. He wondered how long the boy would last. At that moment, the director appeared, floating nearby. He asked them who they thought would win the contest. The director said he liked the boy but believed he could not beat Faye, which left the others confused. He explained with a serious look that a battle is a clash of body and will between the fighters. In the arena, Louis faced the dust kicked up by the explosion. He prepared for the next move. Faye did not give up. She advanced with a sequence of attacks called the Swift Holy Spear, using all her might. The boy used his calculation ability to predict the multiple paths of her attack. The girl grew frustrated when she realized he was managing to defend against all of her strikes. Suddenly, Louis found an opening. He saw that the girl's left hand was a weak point. The young man used his sword to defend against the redhead's attack. She was surprised by his strength. With a firm movement, Louis managed to deflect the girl's spear to the side with his hand. Faye grew annoyed with his resistance. She tried to push him away with all her strength. But the boy jumped behind the girl. He landed without any difficulty. Faye said that not even the young master had managed to dodge all of her blows. But the young man replied that it was not that hard if one watched very carefully. Annoyed, Faye prepared for her next attack. Her spear began to glow. With that, she leaped forward at high speed. The redhead then used her Crescent Fall Holy Spear, attacking with full force from above. The boy analyzed her technique. He realized that spears had various movements for both attack and defense. Combined with the weapon's long reach, he understood that her technique was quite a problem. But at the same time, he also realized there were several fatal weaknesses in her fighting style. The warrior began to spin her spear even faster. He then noted that one of her vulnerabilities was in close quarters combat. His eyes glowed with lightning. He thought that if he timed it right, he could get close to her. With that, he decided to counterattack, using his swordsmanship technique called sword dance. But the girl sensed his intention. With a smile, she said she knew exactly what he was planning. She then shouted that it would not work on her and prepared a quick counterattack. With a quick footwork movement, the redhead spun her body and prepared for the next attack. The warrior then spun her spear at high speed. Louis was completely shocked by the force and skill of her technique. The redhead shouted that her family's holy spear had no weaknesses. She told Louis to get ready. With that, a tornado from the spear headed toward the boy, who prepared to defend himself. The examiners praised her talent, noting that her father had only learned this technique at 16, but the boy said it was a shame and prepared to use one of his own sword techniques. He then used his sword to protect himself from the powerful blow. The boy revealed that the spear's other weakness was its high stamina cost for the user. He knew that if he continued to defend with precision, an opening would surely appear. The girl continued her relentless attack, not realizing what her opponent was planning. Suddenly, the young man's eyes glowed with energy. He saw the opening he had been waiting for. With a shout, he leaped into the air. He came down with his sword, aiming to strike the girl head-on. But to his surprise, the tip of his sword simply broke. A piece of the blade fell to the ground. This made the young man's weapon useless at that moment. Louis was stunned by what had happened and could not believe his bad luck. Faye also seemed surprised by the unexpected outcome. She complimented him, saying that if the sword had not broken, he would have managed to counterattack. The boy confirmed this. He said it seemed his luck was terrible for that to have happened. The girl asked if he had been holding back. He explained it was his habit to observe before fighting. With a smile, Louis said that now he would finally fight her seriously. The redhead pointed out that his weapon was gone, but he did not seem to care. With a movement of his hand, the young man prepared to show his true skill. He then revealed that he was actually much better with his fists and took a fighting stance. Faye watched him carefully. She thought that he had no openings in his combat posture. The white-haired boy remained calm and focused, waiting for his opponent's next move. Suddenly, she saw an opportunity. She shouted that now was the time to attack with everything she had. With a powerful push, the girl advanced toward him with impressive speed. Louis held his ground and prepared for the attack. From the sidelines, Kane warned him that the incoming spinning charge was very dangerous to take head-on. Energy flowed from Louis's hands as he made smooth motions with them. As the spear made contact, both Faye and Kane were in shock. Louis had stopped the spear with a clapping grip on its head. The examiners questioned his move, and the director explained that his attack could break through any defense. The red-haired warrior declared the battle was not finished and pressed on with her assault without a moment's pause. She then hurled the broken spear tip like a dart, aiming to strike him from afar. Her eyes glowed as she yelled that if one way failed, she would simply find another. After landing, she gripped the rest of her spear, preparing for an attack that would cover a wide area. Louis looked up, surprised by his opponent's new tactic in their final confrontation. The red-haired girl then made several copies of herself, which all moved forward to attack at once. Glowing with red energy, the copies rushed in to surround the commoner from every direction. All of their attacks then focused on a single spot, intending to defeat him for good. Yet, the young man simply offered a small smile, showing he was not worried at all. He shouted, "So what? and moved his hands so fast they left many after images to block the assault. One of the hand images caught the tip of her spear, halting the attack in mid-flight. The hand held on tight, bringing the warrior's attack to a complete stop. A large burst of energy erupted, and the blur of hands blocked every single attack. The red-haired girl was in total shock, shouting in confusion about what had just occurred. The director explained that the boy appeared to be using a special skill to stop the spear from spinning. He added that he had never witnessed such a thing, and for a commoner to stop the Durahand technique was amazing. Louis's eyes glowed as he used his energy hands to force the girl backward. The young man then sent out a shockwave, throwing the Harris girl back with great power. Faye stabbed her spear into the ground to stop herself, kicking up a large cloud of dust. Annoyed by what happened, the girl cursed under her breath, unable to believe she had been bested like that. She got back on her feet and demanded to know what strange skill he had used against her. He explained it was a kind of parry from martial arts, meant to cancel the force of a blow. The red-haired girl was completely confused by his words, and did not understand the technique at all. Louis told her to just see it as a special move, and then he moved in for his final strike. The Harris girl was taken by surprise at his speed and had almost no time to react to his advance. With amazing speed, the young man dashed toward the girl to finish the fight. His feet moved so quickly that he seemed to float just above the ground. The young man made several afterimages of himself, confusing the warrior with his motions. Faye swung her spear in a wide circle, trying to hit all the copies at the same time, but he dodged her attack easily, creating even more fake images of himself. Kane, watching from the side, was shocked and wondered if it was just a trick of the eyes. He noted that the boy's movements were like a butterfly and was very impressed. The red-haired girl shouted in frustration, unable to land a hit even when he was right before her. An explanation was given that this was a graceful move from a famous boxer, known as the butterfly step. Using this light and unpredictable movement, he could dodge any attack. The boy noted that the technique was perfect for this moment, and moved closer for the finishing blow. With one accurate punch, Louis struck the girl directly, sending her flying backward. The punch was so powerful that the warrior was thrown back with incredible force. Kane was left completely speechless, finding it hard to believe that Faye had been defeated. The director was also shocked by the outcome, saying it was something he did not expect at all. He remarked that very few people could beat Faye without using magic, and that the commoner might be a genius at fighting. The young man stood as the victor, while the girl lay on the ground, defeated. But she struggled to her feet, declaring it was not over yet, and introducing herself as Faye of the Durahand family. Louis simply watched his opponent with a calm face, ready to keep fighting. He thought to himself that since she came from a great family, she would not give up so easily. The red-haired girl then lunged forward with a powerful kick, as a red aura covered her whole body. He realized she had given up her spear and was now using a martial art style based on her spear techniques. With a loud cry, the red-haired girl charged toward the boy, hoping to land a decisive blow. The young man then took a Wing Chun stance, getting ready to counter her attack. Using the Paxo technique, he prepared to turn aside the girl's attack with his hands. The warrior shouted the name of her move, Crushing Fist, as she moved in with a powerful punch. The two of them then met in a final clash, and a great wave of energy shot outward. He felt the force of her blow and compared its power to that of a 1-inch punch. He praised her technique, and she replied that her family was skilled in more than just fighting with spears. The girl then yelled the name of her attack and sent out several fists made of energy all at once. Louis smiled and accepted her challenge, getting ready to use his own boxing skills. The two fighters then clashed again. He thought that fighting a powerful opponent was the dream he had always hoped for. A strange energy began to take him over, and his heart started to beat with a dark red glow. His eye then began to glow brightly, a sign that he was starting to lose control. A demonic-looking shadow appeared behind him as he shouted for them to enjoy the fight even more. Seeing the sudden change in him, the red-haired warrior grew frightened and asked what was going on. The girl saw a huge, demonic face before her and felt a deep sense of fear. Terrified, the Harris girl realized that she was completely unable to move her body. Showing no mercy, the boy struck his opponent in the face, sending her flying with the force of the hit. The blow sent the girl flying a great distance away. Watching this, the director was completely shocked and wondered what had just happened. The force of the impact threw both of them far apart, shocking everyone who was watching. The girl crashed hard onto the ground, and the force of the blow made her slam into a nearby tree. From a distance, two students watched the scene, worried about the young warrior's state. The two were shocked and could not believe that a simple commoner had managed to push Faye into a corner. One of the students felt a strange pressure, holding his head in pain and confusion. He suddenly started to feel unwell, and his friend asked with worry what was wrong. The boy said he felt sick, and then became filled with terror as he began to understand what might be happening. He then sensed the main character's dark energy, and wondered if it was truly what he suspected it to be. The student was furious. His plan had failed because he had never imagined the commoner would be so strong. With blood on his lips, Brian remembered an old legend, and fear washed over him. He knew that if the legend was true, they could not allow the boy to live. Faye struggled to her feet. She faced her opponent, shocked by his sudden increase in power. Consumed by fury, the protagonist moved forward and struck the girl with a devastating blow. The attack hit her directly in the head, and the force of the impact made her spit up blood. Faye was thrown backward by the powerful strike and fell to the ground, completely defenseless. The hero let out a roar of pure rage, showing that he had completely lost control. He then unleashed a rapid series of punches. The young woman realized his power and speed were on another level. There was no way for her to win. Feeling desperate, the girl understood that if this continued, she would surely be finished. With that, she resolved to use her secret technique, and a magic circle appeared on her fist. The girl then launched her fire fist, clashing with the boy's attack in a desperate defense. A huge explosion of red and yellow energy erupted from the collision of their powers. The girl screamed in pain as she was caught in the blast and thrown far away with great force. She flew through the forest at high speed, her body breaking several trees along the way. The protagonist seemed to be returning to his normal state. Suddenly, the boy came to his senses. He realized with a shock that he had lost control of his body again. He looked down at his hand and was stunned to see it was the power of magic. Kane ran to help him and asked if he was okay, but the young man was only worried about the girl. An upperclassman suddenly appeared and announced that the candidate had lost his emblem during the fight. With a victorious smile, the man declared that the protagonist was disqualified from the exam. Louis looked at his chest and saw that his admission emblem was mysteriously on fire. In an instant, the small flame consumed the entire emblem, turning it to ash. The upperclassman shouted that he had lost, but Kane defended him, saying it was just an accident. But the man claimed the director saw everything, and asked if Kane was really going to help a cheating commoner. The examiner then grabbed him, shouting that trash like him should disappear forever. Suddenly, a voice cried out for him to wait. The red-haired girl appeared, badly injured but still standing. Kane and the upperclassmen were completely shocked to see that the young woman was still conscious. The protagonist was also surprised by the sight and stared at the girl, not knowing what to say. The girl walked closer and asked if the boy was safe, which left him very confused. The man was furious and asked if she also wanted to be disqualified for protecting a commoner. But the young woman shouted for him to shut up, saying she knew his emblem had been burned. Faye apologized to Louis, shocking Kane. The boy, however, insisted on taking all the blame. She then told him he had won and proposed they have another fight once they both entered the academy. The examiner scoffed at the idea, asking how he could pass with only 4 emblems. The red-haired girl then tore off the piece of her clothing that held her emblems to give to the boy. She held her hand out and told him to take it as a reward for his victory. With this, the young man now had a total of 14 emblems and could pass the final exam. The warrior then stated that his emblem burned after the fight was over, so the result still counted. The upperclassman was furious with the girl's actions and shouted her name with great anger. But the redhead ignored the man and turned to Kane, who was surprised by her attitude. She said she would not accept the weak passing, while those who deserved it were failed. With that, the young woman kicked the tip of her spear into the air with a quick, precise move. She then asked what would happen if the 10th place finisher had 14 or more emblems. Kane smiled and said that by coincidence, he was thinking the same thing. The girl commented that he was not so dumb after all, and the two ran off to collect more emblems together. The protagonist simply watched the scene with a smile, as the annoyed upperclassman walked away. Suddenly, the director appeared and announced that Louis had been disqualified and would be escorted out. The upperclassman then glared at him and told the boy not to think this was over. A noble remarked that if Faye defeated other candidates, Louis would surely pass the exam. With a sinister look, the upperclassman said it would not be strange if a candidate was removed by accident. The other noble encouraged him to do it, hoping the protagonist was not as weak as the others. A sinister entity remembered the feeling from before and spoke about Louis' true identity. The director thought that martial arts were strong, but on their own, they could not match magic. Looking at the academy, the boy thought that he needed to learn how to combine magic and martial arts. As he was leaving, the boy worried about his torn clothes and how he would explain it all to his mother. He believed that if he told her the truth, she would become very worried and ask too many questions. Suddenly, a cloaked figure with a dagger appeared behind him, ready for a final strike. But with a quick reflex, the protagonist managed to dodge the blow at the last second. With a powerful kick, Louis sent his attacker flying and prepared for the coming battle. The mysterious man recovered and asked in shock how the young man had noticed his presence. The protagonist said that the smell of blood coming from him was impossible not to notice. At that moment, 2 more men appeared and their leader mocked the boy for being so relaxed near his end. Seeing that he was surrounded, the young man realized his opponents were very skilled and he would have to fight seriously. He then noticed that one of them seemed much more dangerous than the others, and prepared for the worst. Suddenly, the group's leader charged forward with a spinning kick, shouting for the boy not to look away. With a malicious smile, the man said the protagonist's head would fly with his next attack. His eyes suddenly glowed with a blue light as he activated a special ability. The ability created multiple copies of himself, allowing him to easily dodge his enemy's strike. The boy raised his dagger, successfully blocking the next blow. In a swift and precise move, he threw the attacker hard onto the ground. Seizing the moment, he landed a strong kick on the fallen man. He skillfully dodged another attack, displaying his quickness and fighting talent. As the leader got to his feet, he noted the boy's amazing senses and fighting style were just as the report had described. Louis was taken aback by the man's comment, wondering what this report was. The leader admitted the boy fought well up close but wondered how he would handle magic. At his signal, the other three men launched several magical wind arrows toward the young hero. He braced for the incoming attack, surprised by how powerful the arrows felt. He narrowly dodged the shots, which burned holes into the trees behind him. Realizing he could not keep this up, the boy decided to use one of his breathing techniques. This technique channeled the chi in his body, increasing his strength and unlocking hidden power. His strength and speed shot up, readying him for a final countermove. With his eyes glowing blue again, he rushed forward at an incredible speed. The leader scoffed at the display and ordered his men to shoot more wind arrows. The boy charged straight at the archer, weaving past the incoming projectiles. One of the men was stunned by his speed, losing sight of him completely. Suddenly, the hero appeared in the air above them and disarmed the leader with a precise kick. The man was completely shocked and tried to block the surprise attack. Crying out in pain, the leader was thrown backward by the force of the blow. Meanwhile, the other two attackers kept firing their magic arrows without pause. The leader, now on the ground, angrily shouted for his men to stop the boy no matter what. One of the men moved in close, attempting to land a kick on the young man. The hero, however, blocked the powerful blow with his arm. The force of the kick was so strong that it made the boy's hand tremble from the impact. He was pushed back by the force, but he managed to stay on his feet and continue fighting. Facing his opponent, he thought to himself that this man was very strong and dangerous. The man in blue stood with his arms crossed, looking sure of his victory. Suddenly, the other attackers moved to surround the hero from every side. Now completely surrounded, the boy knew he was in a very bad position. Then, a volley of energy arrows flew toward him all at once. With no way to escape, he was hit directly and fell to the ground, seemingly defeated. One of the men celebrated, saying they had finally taken the boy down. He then wondered if the boy was just a commoner, since he had put up such a tough fight. But then, the fallen hero opened one eye. In a swift motion, he jumped to his feet and grabbed his enemy's weapon. The young man used the opponent's own strength against him, pushing him back with all his might. Using this leverage, he broke the man's spine, causing him to scream in pain. He then used the man as a human shield against the arrows, before throwing him at another attacker. A wave of energy erupted from him, sending the last of the enemies flying. The man in blue realized the boy had only pretended to be defeated. Louis stood up, panting but victorious, with his defeated enemies lying on the ground. The man in blue clapped his hands, telling the young man his skills were impressive. The boy asked if he cared about his men, but the man replied that he did not care about trash. The hero then threw the weapon he had taken toward the last enemy standing. The man in blue remarked that the boy was smart. He said that if not for his orders, he would have liked to take the young man as his student. He moved forward with his weapon, saying again that he truly wished the boy could be his apprentice. The weapon, glowing with dark energy, came down with great force, but the hero managed to block the strike. The impact was so powerful that it sent the boy flying back into the forest. As he was thrown through the air, he coughed up blood from the force of the blow. The leader watched him fall and immediately prepared for his next attack. He held a giant hammer and said the boy's skills were good, but not good enough against a better fighter. His eyes glowed with a purple energy as he stated the boy was nowhere near his level. Even though he was at a disadvantage, the hero faced the threat with a determined look. The magic hammer then slammed into the ground, causing a huge explosion. The enemy then came down, ready to finish the fight. The opponent then unleashed a series of quick attacks. Slowly, the dust from the explosion began to clear. The leader looked down into the crater, wondering how the boy could have survived. He was surprised to see the young man still standing in the middle of it, and he wondered if he was alive. Though injured, Louis stood up and declared that he would not be defeated here. The enemy said it was a shame, but the hero's life was about to end. He prepared his most powerful attack, claiming that not even a goddess could save him now. The young man looked up, watching the attack form above him. The man unleashed his heavenly hammer, sending the attack down with enough force to end the battle. With a desperate shout, the boy declared that he could not be defeated now. He wanted to master magic so he could protect the family he held so dear. With one eye glowing red, he decided he would change his own destiny no matter what it took. A red energy then burst from his fist as he yelled that he would survive. The boy's red energy shot upward, crashing into the attacker's dark hammer. The attacker was completely shocked, wondering what this strange and powerful energy could be. The clash created a huge explosion of energy that destroyed everything around them. The explosion grew even bigger, forming a giant fireball in the middle of the dark forest. After the dust settled, the hero fell to his knees, coughing and badly hurt. The man in blue looked at his hammer, which was now smoking, and found it strange. He admitted to himself that, for the first time, he felt like he was fighting an equal. The attacker then finally understood why a certain person was so interested in the hero. Filled with rage, the man raised his hammer again and screamed for the monster to be gone for good. Suddenly, a voice cried out that it was enough. A tornado of energy then struck the man head-on with immense force. The powerful blast sent the man in blue flying. His body spun through the air as he was thrown a great distance. The whirlwind of energy then began to pursue the man. Completely surprised, the attacker faced the energy. He wondered about the source of this incredible power that was hitting him. The man cried out in pain as the attack overwhelmed him. Lying on the ground, the young protagonist watched the scene unfold. He was confused about what was happening. Without warning, a figure appeared. The protagonist recognized the man immediately. He was shocked to see that it was the director of the academy. The Grandmaster praised the boy for controlling his fury and offered him a healing potion. The boy took the flask and drank all of the liquid in one gulp to mend his wounds. Meanwhile, the attacker in blue finally fell to the ground. The director looked furious. He demanded to know who gave the order to attack one of his academy's students. The man addressed him as Grandmaster. He warned him not to think he could protect the monster. Aronian glared at the attacker with a very serious expression. But the man just gave a wicked smile. He said that this was only the start of their plan. Suddenly, the attacker's body exploded, splattering blood across the dark forest. The director wondered if the man had done it to himself. He suspected the Assassin's Guild might be involved. Louis then stood up. He was amazed by the power of the advanced healing potion he had just taken. A green energy surrounded his body. He realized that even his broken bones were now completely healed. The boy asked the director if he was truly just passing by coincidentally. With a serious look, the young man asked the Grandmaster why he was always there to save him. Aronian replied that they would discuss it at the protagonist's home, which left the boy confused. The boy suddenly grew desperate. He realized it was very late and that his mother would be worried. He began to run at full speed, shouting about how much trouble he was in. The director then called out for someone named Kylie. He summoned a dark creature to handle the cleanup. The creature flew down toward the crater as Aronian walked away from the site of the battle. In the town of Mantia, a man was shouting at the protagonist's mother in front of a windmill. The man accused her of disrespecting the Lord. She explained that she was only waiting for the children to arrive. Then, another man grabbed her wrist with a sinister look. He said that she needed to be punished. But before he could do anything, the protagonist appeared and punched him squarely in the face. Louis followed up with a powerful kick, sending the man to the ground. The man screamed in pain from the blow. The boy's mother was shocked to see him. She said that he had finally returned home from the exam. The woman was completely stunned by the scene. She covered her mouth with her hands in disbelief. The young man ran to his mother's side. He worriedly asked if she was all right after what had happened. She touched his face and noticed his torn clothes. She saw that he was covered in bruises. The boy told her not to worry. He said he was fine and had just gotten a little hurt during the academy exam. The man who was attacked got up angrily. He accused the boy of always breaking rules and starting fights. The man then threatened him. He said he would report him to the Lord and call for someone named George. Suddenly, the director appeared, floating in the air. He said that it all seemed to be a misunderstanding. Aronian then landed and introduced himself as the director of the academy, which surprised everyone. The men were terrified. If he could fly, he was surely a grandmaster. With an intimidating stare, the director told them to give his regards to the lord of the city. The two frightened men bowed. They promised to do exactly what the grandmaster had commanded. Aronian then turned to the boy's mother. He told her he had something he needed to discuss with her. The three of them entered the house. The director invited them to sit so they could talk. Inside, the grandmaster looked around. He wondered if this was the windmill the nobles had mentioned. With a sharp eye, the director noticed the boy's inventions were scattered all around the room. Elsewhere, Louis was busy working on one of his creations as the grandmaster watched him closely. The young man's mother came in with some apples. She said her son had made everything and had improved their lives. She worriedly asked if her son had caused any trouble. Aronian assured her that his results were incredible. The director thought to himself that he had only seen such talent once before, in the ancient scripture of Gaia. The story flashed back to a long-forgotten time when humanity was ruled by cruel monsters. But a genius created the arcane arts. Together with his friends, he saved humanity from being wiped out. The day of this hero's birth became known as Liberation Day, and everyone celebrated the great victory. In the scripture of Gaia, this man was known to all as the legendary first hero. Back in the present, his mother called the hero a savior, but Louis remembered that the legends mentioned no heroes. Aronian then spoke with a serious tone. He said the hero was described very differently in the old stories. He was a man with black hair and black eyes. This revelation shocked both the protagonist and his mother. The director revealed this was a great secret. It was known only to the most powerful people in the world. Despite saving everyone, a madness lived inside the hero's heart. It was a madness that wanted only to destroy. The hero turned against his own allies. This became humanity's first great nightmare. This inner madness is like a curse. It eats away at the soul of the person who has it. Louis was shocked to hear this. He wondered if his own struggles with madness came from that ancient time. Aronian explained that this was the reason people with black hair and eyes are eliminated in every country. The director then touched Louis's head. He asked if the boy really thought he could fool everyone just by dyeing his hair. His mother became distraught. She cried out that she was the one who told her son to dye his hair. The protagonist comforted his mother. He told her to calm down and that everything was going to be all right. With a look of confidence, the young man said that if the director had wanted to harm him, he would have done it already. Aronian smiled. He explained that because the boy had resisted the madness, he saw the qualities of a new hero in him. The mother and son were stunned by this statement. She asked if he truly said the words, "a new hero." The director picked up an apple. He said that the world seems peaceful, but that is not the whole truth. Holding the fruit, he explained that a great darkness is hiding in the shadows. Seeing the boy gave him an idea. Aronian then held the apple up toward the moon. He said the legends that everyone knows are wrong. With a serious expression, the Grand Master said he wanted to guide the young man to shape humanity's future. Suddenly, the director threw the apple toward the hero with incredible speed. But the boy's reflexes were quick. He managed to catch the fruit, showing his amazing skill. The Grand Master then revealed that thanks to Faye and Cain, the protagonist had passed the final exam. With that, he offered the young man a chance to receive personal training from him at the Candria Academy. Louis smiled and asked if the director was willing to bet on him, even with the risk that he might go mad. The director stared at him intently. His eyes began to glow with a sinister purple energy. Suddenly, the apple in the boy's hand was sliced cleanly in half, leaving the young man very surprised. Aronian then said with a grave look that if that day ever came, he would eliminate the boy himself. The following day, his friend was surprised to hear about the personal invitation he had received. The boy, however, was worried. He thought about the academy's high costs and the fees for the dormitory. He then wondered what his true connection was to the legendary first hero. He remembered what the director had asked him, questioning if he thought hair dye alone could fool everyone. The Grandmaster's threat then came to his mind, and he questioned how much he could trust the man's words. He asked Aronian why his mother knew everything. Aronian replied that she would be a burden if she were kept in the dark. The boy shouted in anger that his mother was not a burden to anyone, glaring at the man with a furious look. The director explained that if his true identity were ever revealed, his family would also face great danger. As Aronian flew away, he told the young man to become stronger, warning that the real tests were only just beginning. A look of determination crossed the boy's face. He knew he had to get much stronger, no matter what it took. Suddenly, the children from the orphanage ran towards him, shouting his name with happy voices. A small girl named Lana leaped into his arms, and the boy hugged her back with a warm smile on his face. Tears streamed down the little girl's face as she asked if he would return, not wanting their goodbye to be forever. He immediately comforted her, promising to come back during the holidays because this place was his real home. The girl made a pinky promise with him, and he told her not to worry, because he would always keep his word. One of the other boys then called out, saying a noble's butler was there and wanted to speak with him. The butler stood by a carriage and asked the boy to confirm his identity. He introduced himself as the butler for the Aranka family, and handed over an invitation from the young master, Cain. Opening the invitation, the boy wondered if the noble wanted to become better friends before school began. He decided to accept the invitation, and the butler led him to a luxurious carriage that was waiting. The scene shifted to the city of Harzin, located in the northern Candria Empire. The butler explained that the Aranka family was very important, and that the city had become successful because of them. When they arrived, the young man was stunned by the massive size of the great noble family's mansion. Just then Cain appeared, running toward him with a wide smile and calling out his name. Cain gave him a hug and said he heard the boy had caused a big scene during the academy's final exam. The young noble admitted he only passed thanks to the boy and Faye, adding that he would forget about their bet. Cain then pointed out that they never fought in the exam and that he wanted a training match before classes started. The hero realized that Cain just wanted to learn more about the academy and the kind of magic he used. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from the top of the stairs asking what all the noise was about. A noble woman in a purple dress stood there, looking down at them with a cold and serious expression. The young blonde noble tried to introduce the boy to the woman, explaining that this was his friend. But she shouted for him to be quiet, her face twisted in a look of pure rage. The heir of the Aranka family was completely shocked and very afraid of the woman. She began to scold her son, demanding to know since when just anyone was allowed into their family home. The woman declared that someone like him was not worthy of being her son's friend and called the boy trash. She ordered Cain to go train as his father commanded, so that he might become a great sage in the future. The noblewoman then turned to the boy and asked what he wanted by getting close to her son. She held out a gold ring, telling him it was valuable enough for him to live his life in peace. With a look of disgust, she threw the ring onto the floor right in front of the boy. The furious noblewoman then shouted for him to take the ring and leave the mansion forever. Filled with his own anger, the heir shouted at his mother, asking why she was doing all of this. With a look of shame, the blonde noble turned and apologized to his new friend. The boy knelt and explained that he became Kane's friend because he respected his great skill in battle. He then asked if Kane's word was worth as little as the gold ring lying on the floor. Kane was completely shocked and speechless, amazed by his friend's courage in facing his mother. With a furious expression, the noblewoman shouted for someone to come and resolve the situation at once. At her call, several guards appeared and the woman ordered them to throw the commoner out of the mansion. But Kane stood in front of his friend, stating that the boy had more talent than him and had even defeated Faye. The noblewoman scoffed at the idea that a commoner could ever be better than the children of the Empire's noble families. With a serious look, Louis said that with him around, Kane could become even stronger. Full of rage, the woman shouted that the boy was mocking the Aranka family and called him arrogant. At that moment, an incredible pressure rose in the room, sending people flying. A man suddenly appeared at the door, and his presence alone was enough to stop all the chaos. The man repeated Louis's words, asking if it was true that Kane could become stronger. Louis and the young blonde noble were shocked to see the master of the Aranka family standing there. As the man walked closer, the woman called him master, her face filled with worry. The noblewoman then called her husband by his name, William, with an expression of total desperation. She pleaded that if Kane stayed with the commoner, he would never reach his father's level. But the man simply ignored her. He then called out to his son, and the young noble bowed respectfully before his powerful father. Louis introduced himself as Kane's friend and sensed that the man's aura was incredible. The master then asked his son if what the boy had said about his own power was true. With a serious expression, the man approached the young man and told him to prove his words right now. The master of the family then released a powerful aura in the shape of a tiger to test the boy. The boy immediately felt the intense pressure and could sense the man's intention to end things. The red aura charged straight at the young boy. As it hit him, he felt like he could not breathe from the immense pressure on his body. But even while feeling that great force, the boy faced the noble with a very determined look. He readied himself for a battle, realizing that the man was being completely serious with him. The young man understood that the master of the Aranka family truly intended to finish him right there. With a grim look, the older noble continued to release his energy without any mercy. The pressure was so great that it felt to the boy as if his very soul was being torn from his body. He felt the Grandmaster's willpower was impressive, yet terrifying. Still, he commented that the incredible power was to be expected from a Grandmaster. He revealed that hunting monsters had built his resistance to this kind of pressure. An orange energy then began to burst from his body. The master was completely shocked by the power the boy was unleashing. William was completely stunned and could not believe what he was seeing. The young man's aura took the form of a fire dragon to face the tiger. With a determined look, the boy faced the master of the Aranka family as an equal. The two auras clashed in a battle of power, the tiger against the fire dragon. Kane was shocked by what he saw. Louis then fell to his knees. Kane rushed to help his friend, asking if he was okay, and Louis confirmed he was fine. William then called out to the boy, asking why he sought so much power. With a determined look, the young man replied it was to protect his family from any danger. The master of the Aranka family was silent for a moment, thinking about the answer. He then turned to his son, saying his willpower was weak and that he should learn from the commoner. Kane's mother was completely shocked and asked her husband what he was thinking. But the man glared at her coldly and asked if she had an opinion on his decision. Frightened, the noblewoman fell silent, while her son watched the scene in embarrassment. Kane then called Louis to the training ground so they could begin their fight. When they arrived, the heir apologized for what his parents had done earlier. But Louis said it was alright, adding that his father had been a bit too extreme. The young blonde explained that his father was fair and thought Louis was more suitable to be the heir. With a smile, Louis understood that the master had only tested him for his son's sake. Kane then became confused by the word love, seeming not to understand what his friend meant. The heir then remembered that he had barely left the house since he was little, doing nothing but train. His only childhood memories were of eating, sleeping, and training to become stronger. His father's wish was for him to become a great sage, like his grandfather before him. Not knowing why, he kept swinging his sword just to earn his father's approval. To the young noble, that house felt like a prison, where he even needed permission to breathe. Despite the praise, his status and talent felt like chains that only grew tighter. The heir explained that the more he was kept inside, the more he wanted to know the world outside. His biggest dream was to sing freely like a bard and be the master of his own life. He wanted to be like a bird flying across the continent without any worries. But, he said, this was a world where only strength truly mattered. With a serious look, Louis simply listened to his new noble friend's frustrations. Kane then explained it was not about wanting to be strong, but that swinging his sword was his only way out. For the heir, that was the only way to break the chains that bound him. He revealed that his father graduated from the academy, so he would go there to get stronger as well. The young blonde shouted that all he wanted was permission to live his life freely. With a determined smile, the noble told Louis he was counting on his help. Louis accepted the challenge and prepared to train with his new friend. With that, the two finally began to train together on the Aranka family's training grounds. From a distance, the master of the family asked his servant about the investigation. The servant said the boy was not ordinary and used fighting techniques no one had ever seen. He had also broken records and defeated Fae, even when she was using magic. The servant added that he was protected by Aronian, who fought assassins to save the boy's life. With a serious look, William remarked that the boy seemed to be a big troublemaker. The servant then asked why he allowed someone like that to be near the young master. The older noble explained that such people attract danger, and that overcoming challenges helps one grow. Meanwhile, on the training grounds, Louis dodged a kick from Cain, showing he was the better fighter. William then thought that maybe this boy could truly make his son stronger. Cain then shouted for the boy to face his technique and unleashed a powerful wind attack. Louis smiled and told him to bring it on, for he was ready to fight. The master of the family admitted that his son seemed to have a better eye for people than he did. The young noble then used his special technique, Wind Rush, and charged forward with all his might. With his eyes glowing blue, Louis analyzed Cain's attack to predict his movements. Cain was completely shocked to see his opponent's fist coming toward him. With a quick move, the young man managed to block the noble's sword with his hand. He then said that using magic to move faster was good, but Cain's movements were too simple. Cain then smiled, saying he now understood why even Fae could not beat him in the exam. Louis asked if something was on his face, because Cain was staring at him in a strange way. The heir then asked if he had ever noticed anything different about his own fighting style. He was confused because his techniques were the secret arts his father and grandfather used to become strong. Louis then said he meant that there was another path for the young noble. The young blonde was shocked by the idea of a path different from his father's and grandfather's. With that, the boy picked up a sword from the weapon rack to show what he meant. He then called to Cain and asked if the young noble wanted to surprise his own father. From afar, the master of the Aranka family watched the scene, very curious about what would happen next. The older noble continued to watch the two boys with a very attentive and thoughtful look. With that, the two young men leaped into the air and began a new training session. The hero had just explained that in martial arts, speed was a great and powerful weapon. He added that speed was not just about fast movement, but also about quick reactions and decisions. Cain possessed a natural speed that worked well with his wind magic. Louis mentioned that piercing techniques were difficult, and it did not matter that his own grandfather had mastered them. He thought this difficulty was the very reason his father had stopped at the grandmaster level. The boy said that a change to a special fighting style was needed to use his talent to its fullest. With a confident smile, he asked the young noble if he was ready for such a change. Cain told him not to compare him to other nobles, stating he would do anything to finally be free. Louis liked this answer and explained that the key to fighting was to always move and fall back when needed. With determined expressions, the two got ready to show William their new skill. Cain used his wind magic, shouting to go faster as they both rushed forward to attack. They moved with great speed, impressing the master and his servant who watched. The servant cried out in worry for his master, but the master watched the scene with a calm face. The two young men then attacked the master of the Aranka family, their daggers ready. Master William stood perfectly still while the two boys circled him at high speed. Louis explained that daggers were the fastest and easiest weapons to handle in a fight. Their goal was to use their strengths as much as possible to defeat any opponent. He then used his daggers with his butterfly step technique to create a perfect attack. William was completely shocked and surprised by the new skill the two were showing. The protagonist tried to attack the noble from every direction. Cain also used his wind magic, making several copies of himself to join the attack. The duo then attacked the master from all sides in an amazing attack from the air. Cain realized that his body and his dagger felt lighter than they ever had before. With this new feeling, the young noble felt like a bird flying free in the sky. He loved how the daggers, his fighting style, and his wind magic all worked together. Holding his dagger tightly, the boy got ready for the next move in the fight. The master of the Aranka family was surprised as he watched his son's new skill. William looked on, shocked and unable to believe what he was seeing. Cain then shouted to his father that this was his true path in martial arts. The master only grunted as a dark energy started to flow from his body. He then released a powerful shockwave that sent the two young men flying away. Full of anger, William asked if his son had given up the clan's techniques just to prove a point. The two boys were thrown backward but managed to recover in the air and prepare a counterattack. The protagonist then shouted for Cain to speed up, and the two joined hands for the attack. Cain then used his wind magic, making both himself and Louis move faster. The two of them then moved forward once more. They continued their attack, surrounding the master with a whirlwind of green energy slashes. The master turned around quickly, but William stopped the attack with just one hand, asking with contempt if that was all they had. He reached out his hand to grab Cain's dagger. The blonde boy then rushed forward with his new speed. With an angry look, the noble faced his son's attack with scorn. William then shouted that his son was a coward for using this new way of fighting. Then Cain remembered that falling back was not a weakness, but a way to prepare the next blow. The blonde noble then understood that a retreat would lead into his next attack. Cain then used his wind magic to create a tornado, attacking his father with all his strength. The two rushed forward at high speed with their daggers out, ready to show their new skill. The master of the Aranka family was surprised to see the two young boys. New technique. With a battle cry, the two leaped into the air to attack the Grandmaster with a combined strike. Louis then mentioned a baseball technique called a change-up, which left Kane confused. With a confident smile, the boy got ready to teach the new move. The protagonist then shouted for Kane to block his attack so he could understand the technique. The young heir prepared himself and blocked his friend's attack with a very quick move. With that, the two began to practice the new technique to improve their fighting skills. Louis explained that it was a technique to trick opponents by changing speeds. He added that simple movements could be used as fakes to make an enemy react slowly. This would let them overpower an enemy, using their speed to make their dagger strikes stronger. The family master was completely confused by the duo's fast and unpredictable movements. Kane then moved forward and used the new technique to attack his father, who was surprised by the strike. But William said that such a slow attack was meaningless, and he looked at his son with scorn. But the heir's attack was actually a fake, meant to trick the master of the Aranka family. With a look of surprise, the older noble finally understood the real purpose of the attack. The attack passed by him without doing any harm, while the young blonde boy stayed in the air. William faced his son, looking impressed with the new skill he had shown. With confident smiles, the two prepared to begin their real, combined attack. The two boys then moved forward together, attacking the master from all sides with their daggers. But William shouted, "That's enough," and stopped the two young men's training with a firm order. The two then stopped their attack. The noble then called out to Kane. The heir of the Aranka family was nervous, as he waited for his father's decision. William then told his son in a very serious voice not to bring shame to the family name. Kane smiled and simply said yes, showing he was determined to follow the new path he had chosen. The servant came closer and called to his master, who was watching the scene with a calm, thoughtful look. The older noble thought about their attack methods and the feints that used changes in speed. With an energy dagger in his hand, the master found the idea of retreating to be interesting. William then thought to himself that he had just been taught a lesson by two children. The protagonist said it was a good fight, but it was a shame the training was already over. Kane hugged his friend, saying he had been recognized for the first time, and that he had a gift for him. They soon arrived at the family library, and the protagonist was shocked by how big it was. The boy was amazed by all the books and could not believe his eyes. Kane then said this was his way of thanking him, because without his help, he would not have found his own path. The protagonist was surprised by this unexpected gift from the heir of the Aranka family. The boy was amazed to see that the box held a rare book and a bag full of money. The young noble explained that the books were about magic and would help him a lot with his studies at the academy. Louis found out that all students had to go through a required ritual to awaken their magic. The young man was curious and asked what the ritual was, so Kane pointed to one of the books he had just received. He explained that the ritual took place at the statue of Gaia and cost 10 gold coins. The hero felt hopeless because the orphanage needed that money to survive for many years. But the young noble calmed him down, telling him that everything at the academy was free for students who passed the entrance exam. With a smile, Kane asked if this meant the bet they had made was finally settled. The boy accepted the gift and thought about how he needed to find a way to earn money quickly. He then had an idea to use what he knew from his past life to invent new things. He then asked if the Aranka family had any connections with merchant guilds that could help him. The protagonist simply said that it was a secret, and his friend would find out everything soon enough. A week passed. At Candria Academy, the entrance ceremony for the Empire's new students was about to begin. A white-haired boy walked confidently toward the academy, excited for his first day of school. He suddenly caught a strange scent in the air. At the same time, he sensed someone approaching him from behind in the courtyard. The other student noticed the smell, thinking it was an expensive perfume. She assumed the boy must come from a wealthy family. A girl suddenly hugged him from behind. She offered to give the newcomer a tour of the entire academy. He accepted her help. He then introduced himself to the girl as Louis Kirill. The girl smiled, commenting that his name was strange. She then asked if he was an illegitimate son. She explained that things had changed in the last 2 years because the emperor had grown old. As a result, the imperial heirs were now in conflict with the nobles and other great families at the academy. Rose revealed that while the director kept things looking peaceful, the reality was very different. Behind the scenes, everyone fought for resources. Students who failed to earn enough credits were expelled. After her explanation, the girl moved closer and touched his chin. She warned him that people were watching him, so he had better do his best in his classes. She leaned in even closer, asking which powerful family his own family supported. Suddenly, another boy stepped in and separated them. He recognized Louis as the commoner who had broken the entrance exam record. The new boy smiled and extended his hand. He introduced himself to Louis as Brian. Rose looked shocked. She had been certain that the scent was an expensive perfume. Annoyed, she declared it a waste of time. She then turned and left the two boys alone. Louis returned the greeting, shaking Brian's hand with a confident smile. The blonde-haired boy told Louis not to worry about the girl's behavior. Brian explained that the academy was like a miniature version of the Empire, which could make things difficult for commoners. Just then, another boy named Kane appeared, running toward them and shouting Louis's name. Brian said his goodbyes, mentioning he had other students to talk to. He told Louis to call on him if he ever needed help. As Brian turned and walked away, his expression became very serious. Kane walked up to Louis and asked what he had been discussing with Brian. The noble boy revealed that Brian was the chancellor's son, but he added that they were not close. Louis considered this information for a moment. He remarked that Brian still seemed to be a pretty decent guy. Suddenly, two more students, Faye and Milena, appeared. Milena said that she did not like men with weak wills. The red-haired girl, Faye, greeted him. She said that if he was as strong as people claimed, she might finally acknowledge him. Louis thanked her for her help during the exam. The warrior replied that he had passed on his own strength. Faye punched the air, declaring that she would definitely win their next fight. Milena shouted at him not to be ignored, telling him that if he wanted attention, he would have to beat her first. With that, Milena pulled Faye away, saying they needed to finish their registration quickly. Kane then handed a bag of coins to Louis, who was completely shocked. Kane explained that he had followed Louis's instructions. He had opened a trading company and burned down a village. Louis then revealed his secret. It was a new type of perfume, with a much more subtle scent. Kane admitted the scent was good. Louis replied that they would see just how good it was once it started selling. Kane mentioned he would give the perfume to his mother, and Louis praised him for the good idea. Louis then asked Kane to keep their business a secret, and Kane agreed to the plan. An administrator handed Louis his academy credit card and wished him good luck. Suddenly, a group of nobles approached. They accused him of only passing the exam because of help from Kane and Faye. Kane revealed that another student named Sheath had been expelled for hiring assassins to kill Louis. Hearing this, Louis's expression grew serious. He thought to himself that he had finally figured out who was behind everything. Kane warned Louis that Sheath had an older brother at the academy. He advised Louis to stay close to him for protection. From a distance, Sheath's older brother glared at the two of them. His face was filled with pure hatred. A malicious smile crossed the noble's face. He muttered to himself that the fun for those two was just beginning. Inside the academy's great hall, the director stood on stage, welcoming all the new students. The director, Aronian, congratulated them for overcoming many difficulties to reach this point. He told them this was only the beginning of their journey, and that he hoped they would all become pillars of the empire. He then concluded his welcome by announcing the freshman representative. It was the first place winner, a boy named Neil Gunn. To everyone's shock, the boy walked onto the stage wearing no clothes and carrying a giant axe. The other students stared in disbelief, wondering what the wild-looking boy was thinking. Even Director Aronian looked completely annoyed by the boy's behavior. Neil shouted at the crowd, telling all the idiots to shut up and listen to him. He revealed his only goal, to defeat every single student until they were all wetting their pants in fear. The noble students were furious at his words. They called him an uneducated, savage brute. The red-haired boy just shouted back at them to shut up, calling them weaklings who could only talk. A nearby teacher looked discouraged, saying his stomach hurt just thinking about having to teach that boy. Suddenly, Neil pointed his weapon toward the crowd. He declared that his main target was standing among them. With that, he threw the giant axe with all his strength, sending it flying toward the students. The weapon slammed into the ground with a devastating impact, creating a huge crater in the hall floor. The axe came to a stop, its blade stuck deep in the floor, right in front of a single student. To everyone's shock, the target of the attack was Louis, who watched the scene with a very serious expression. The red-haired boy shouted Louis Kirill's name, challenging him to a fight right then and there. Neil made an impressive leap, landing perfectly on top of his embedded axe. He stared down at Louis. A wide, malicious smile spread across his face as he shouted that they would fight to see who was truly the strongest. Louis looked back up at him, with a determined expression, showing no signs of fear. The red-haired boy yelled for a fight, wanting to decide once and for all who was the strongest. Kane suddenly stepped in front of him. He shouted for the boy to stop, reminding him that the ceremony was not yet over. The redhead, Neil, then mocked the noble, asking if he was too scared to have a real fight with him. At this provocation, the blonde noble became completely furious with the first-place winner. Kane felt a wave of annoyance. He thought to himself that everyone was the same, underestimating him because of how he looked. Filled with rage, the blonde noble lunged forward, throwing a punch at the redhead to end the argument. But to the surprise of everyone watching, a boy named Louis caught his friend's fist and stopped the attack cold. With a calm expression, the white-haired boy simply told the angry noble to calm himself down a little. The redhead just smiled at this. He announced he could fight both of them at once, calling them cowards. Just then, a boy named Brian appeared. He told them they should try to get along, since they were the only talented commoners. He warned that if they kept acting so selfishly, they would not last very long at the academy. But the first-place winner ignored him. He told Brian to go away, saying he had no interest in fighting the weak. Brian was stunned by the boy's nerve, while Kane just smiled at the unfolding drama. The other students were furious, muttering that commoners had no manners or proper education. Kane then made fun of Brian, telling him he only embarrassed himself by getting involved in their business. A wicked smile spread across Neil's face. He accepted the challenge, saying he would finish Brian first. Suddenly, a teacher appeared. He reminded them that fighting between students was forbidden at the academy. He explained that fights were only allowed during special classes or tournaments, and only when a teacher was present. The man looked at them with a serious expression. He asked if they understood, warning that breaking the rule meant expulsion. The redhead let out a laugh. He admitted that getting expelled would be a very big problem. With that, he picked up his axe and said their fight would have to wait for another time. But before leaving, the boy turned to face Louis with a serious look, telling him to wait for him. Louis simply stared back at the first-place winner in silence. The teacher then brought the ceremony to a close, informing everyone that classes would begin the next day. Louis wondered why he had been challenged. Kane told him it was the fault of a certain brainless girl. Annoyed, a girl named Faye punched Kane. She called him an idiot for nearly getting them expelled, but Faye then took the blame. She explained that she had fought Neil during the academy's final exam. She said their fight ended in a draw. Neil, however, had heard that Louis defeated her and now wanted to challenge him. Louis replied that it was a good thing a real fight had not started, as he would feel bad if she were expelled. With the misunderstanding cleared up, the young man called for his new friends to leave the area. As the three of them walked away, the protagonists realized they were already disliked by the other students. They soon arrived at the academy store to purchase the supplies they would need for their classes. Inside, Louis was startled by the high prices, but the saleswoman told him it was no big deal. She showed him a fluffy pillow that cost 30 silver coins, calling it a great bargain. Next, the woman offered him a different pillow, filled with magical herbs, this one for 5 gold coins. Kane commented that the price was cheap. It made the protagonist realize just how important money and credits were here. The boy decided to buy the cheapest option, a beginner's kit that cost 100 silver coins. He was glad he had earned money from the perfume he made, and he planned to send the rest to the orphanage. He then realized he would need magic potions for training, which meant he needed more ways to earn money. The girls then said their goodbyes, mentioning that his magical awakening ritual was the next day. Watching them go, the young man knew he would have to work very hard to earn more money. The scene then shifted to the student dormitory, a large and very luxurious-looking building. Carrying his supplies, the protagonist looked for room number 60, hoping he did not have a bad roommate. Suddenly, he heard a commotion down the hall and saw items being thrown out of a doorway. As he walked past, the boy heard someone inside shouting for others not to mess with them. A group of nobles had cornered another boy. They threatened him, telling him to do as they said. The purple-haired young man, however, just stared back at them with a calm and fearless gaze. Annoyed by the boy's lack of fear, the group's leader prepared to attack, angrily calling him a scoundrel. He grabbed the boy by his tie and asked if he was looking for a fight. Suddenly, our protagonist reached out and touched the aggressor's arm with a single finger, striking a pressure point. The noble cried out in pain, feeling as if his arm was being ripped apart from the inside. Louis calmly reminded him that duels were forbidden and asked if he was truly okay with being expelled. The noble's friends panicked, insisting that they had not actually done anything wrong yet. The aggressor, however, accused Louis of attacking first, claiming anything he did would be self-defense. With his hand glowing with energy, the noble tried to attack our hero, who dodged the blow with ease. The punch flew past him and struck one of the aggressor's friends, who had been standing right behind him. The impact sent the boy flying backward, leaving his companions completely shocked. Louis turned with a small smile and asked when he had ever laid a hand on anyone there. The noble on the floor looked at his friend in confusion and asked why he had been attacked. With a quick kick, our protagonist redirected the bully's energy, causing him to strike another one of his friends. The blow landed right in the other noble's stomach, who yelled out in pain from the unexpected hit. The boy crumpled to the floor, leaving the group's leader completely confused by what was happening. The strange red energy then passed to another noble, who prepared to attack his own companions. The boy looked down at his own hands in terror, realizing he could no longer control his body. Louis then used his technique to make the boy trip, causing him to knock over all the other bullies. They all toppled to the ground, falling over one another like a line of dominoes. One of the fallen nobles angrily asked why he was attacked, but the other denied doing anything. Desperate, the group's leader pointed at our hero and shouted that it was all the commoners' fault. With a smile, the young man told them not to blame others just because their bodies felt strange. The leader then accused the boy of controlling their bodies, calling him a monster. A dark look crossed the protagonist's face. He repeated the word monster and glared at the noble with disgust. Frightened, the aggressor asked what he was going to do. The boy began to walk menacingly toward him. Suddenly, the purple-haired boy placed a hand on Louis' shoulder, trying to calm the situation. Our protagonist turned to face the boy, whose expression seemed to be asking him to let it go. With that, Louis turned back to the nobles and asked if they wanted to go complain to the director. Terrified, the aggressor shouted that he was not normal. They scrambled away, promising that he would pay for this. The purple-haired boy then introduced himself as our protagonist's new roommate. Louis just stared at his new roommate, who seemed very shy and quiet after the incident. On a pillow on the floor, the young man could see a name: Cara Candace. The protagonist then called out to his new roommate, who simply turned and walked away without saying a word. The young man was left standing alone in the room, with the mess from the fight still scattered on the floor. With a smile, he thought about being ignored. His roommate seemed like the type of person who often got bullied. While tidying up the room, he reflected on his chaotic first day and hoped the ritual tomorrow would be peaceful. The scene changed to a dark temple at night, where two people stood in the shadows. Two figures observed a glowing magic circle that was drawn upon the floor of the room. The following day, students gathered in the grand temple of the academy for a magic ritual. He looked at a statue, wondering if it depicted the goddess of this world. A teacher explained that the statue was of the great creator, the goddess Gaia. The story told of a time long ago when the goddess Gaia made a world for both humans and monsters. Over time, however, the monsters used their power to rule over everyone else. Dragons took control of the skies, and giants ruled the lands. Krakens commanded the seas, and the fight for power between these creatures brought great conflict to the world. Many humans were lost during this time of chaos. Seeing this, the goddess grew angry and decided to give a blessing to the powerless humans. This led to martial artists becoming the new rulers of the world. The teacher announced that it was now their turn to receive the blessing and awaken their own magic. Louis felt frustrated because the legendary first hero was not mentioned once again. His roommate Kara stood beside him and noticed his unhappy expression. Suddenly, the teacher called out to the two boys, surprising them both. The teacher pointed to the side and instructed the two of them to follow him for the ritual. He led them to two platforms, explaining that if they had talent, they would feel the elements. With a serious look, the man warned them that if they felt nothing, they were considered worthless. The young man stared coldly at the teacher, not bothered by the threat. The teacher continued, stating that the academy had no use for students without talent. With that said, the teacher announced the start of the ritual and told everyone to sit on the floor. The boy wondered if the teacher hated him for some reason he did not know. The four elements of earth, fire, wind, and water were the foundation of their world. The teacher told them to focus their minds under the goddess's blessing, to feel the elements. Holding a magic circle in his hands, the man began to pray to the goddess above. He asked the goddess to bless all the students in the temple. Suddenly, an energy of fire appeared at the ritual, surprising all the students. Then, a water energy appeared, glowing with a bright blue light in the air. A beam of light then struck the goddess statue, causing it to shine brightly on the altar. The statue's eyes began to glow with a powerful golden energy. A golden light covered the whole statue, and a magic circle appeared on the temple floor. Suddenly, a ray of golden energy hit one of the nobles who had bothered Louis earlier. An image of the goddess, surrounded by a bright golden aura, then appeared in the sky. The other students watched in awe as the beautiful elements floated around them in the air. One boy celebrated as the fire element chose him, while another was chosen by water. To everyone's surprise, a massive energy of fire and earth then exploded around a boy named Neil. A shocked noble shouted that the commoner had awakened two elements at the same time. Another wondered if he was a genius, seeing how easily he controlled the magic. Neil laughed with a wicked smile, shouting that this was the power he had always dreamed of. His energy spread through the temple, showing his amazing control over the elements. He gave a battle cry, declaring that the elements would have to obey him. He then turned to face Louis and his roommate, neither of whom had awakened any power. The red-haired boy said that someone who failed to awaken could not be his rival, telling Louis not to disappoint him. One of the nobles noticed that no elements were gathering around the young man. Meanwhile, a dark aura surrounded the young man as he wondered why he could not feel anything. He questioned if it was because he did not truly belong in this fantasy world. But then he remembered the strange power he felt when he fought Cain at the mansion. Now he felt his mind being crushed by something strange and dark. A dark energy wrapped around him, and he felt as if he were being pulled into nothingness. He clenched his teeth, telling himself that his will was not so weak. Remembering his past life, the boy vowed that he would not be broken so easily again. With that thought, he released a burst of blue energy that pushed the darkness away. The powerful shockwave spread throughout the entire temple. A massive beam of golden light then shot toward the sky, surprising every student there. The young man opened his eyes and was shocked to see them filled with colorful lights. He wondered if the four colorful lights he was seeing were the elements. The teacher was in complete shock, as he had used a magic circle to isolate the boy's mind. With a surprised look on his face, the young man reached for a sphere of blue energy. The sphere of light, however, suddenly moved away from his hand, leaving him confused. He wondered why he could feel the elements but was unable to touch them. He tried to grab the spheres again, but they continued to dodge his hands. Louis grew annoyed with the situation, thinking it was a real pain. The teacher smiled, saying the boy was mistaken if he thought he could awaken just by escaping. It was a confinement magic circle, designed to block the connection between a person's spirit and the elements. A magic orb was also being used to weaken the link between people and the elements. The teacher then warned the boy that he had enemies who wanted to crush him. The man told him to just sit and wait in despair until the ritual was over. Night fell, and the other students began to leave the temple. The nobles mocked the two boys, saying that only Neil, the first-place winner, mattered. The young man kept his eyes closed, his face showing a serious expression. Beside him, Kara also looked very focused and serious about the situation. Suddenly, Kara pointed to the floor and asked what was wrong with it. With a small smile, the purple-haired boy revealed that it was a trap. The young man then understood and became furious upon hearing this. He stood up and took a fighting stance on top of the confinement circle. He slammed his fist into the floor with all his strength, trying to break the magic circle. But he was completely shocked by what happened next. The floor broke, but the glowing confinement circle remained perfectly intact. Kara shouted for him to hurry, pointing to the object that was causing the problem. With a smile, the young man thanked his new roommate for the help. He wondered why such a thing was there, and if it was only a coincidence. But his look turned serious as he realized it was no accident at all. From a distance, the teacher watched them, looking very annoyed by this turn of events. Ignoring the teacher, the boy announced that the real part of the ritual would now begin. A blue aura surrounded him as he focused on finally awakening his magical power. Suddenly, all the elements started flying toward him at great speed. The lights created a powerful vortex of energy around his body. The remaining students were shocked, saying his vortex looked just like the one from the first-place winner. At the center of it all, he was surrounded by an incredibly powerful elemental energy. The teacher stared, his face a mask of fury and utter disbelief. It was impossible. The confinement circle and the magic forbidden orb were supposed to be absolute. Not even a master should have been able to break through them. Before he could even think to intervene, a firm hand clamped down on his shoulder, stopping him cold. He turned to see the director, whose eyes were filled with a deep, cutting disappointment. The look alone was a clear command to stand down. With his plan completely foiled, the teacher could only bow his head in shame. The other students whispered in confusion, unable to understand what was happening. They questioned the director's presence, guessing he was there for the commoner and wondering about the secret relationship between them. Seething with rage and humiliation, the teacher clenched his fist tightly and turned to leave the hall. The director's low, stern voice followed him, serving as a final warning never to interfere again. Later that night, by the quiet solitude of a fountain, the disgraced teacher met with a mysterious, sharply dressed man. He admitted his complete failure, telling the man he needed to be left alone for a while. The man simply smiled. "Don't worry," he said smoothly. "I'll take care of the rest." As the teacher walked away into the darkness, the man watched him go, a sinister and determined look settling on his face. He was none other than Sheath's older brother. Back in the temple, the director issued a command to Kylie. It was to keep a close watch on the academy, as he would not tolerate outsiders wreaking havoc within its walls. He had removed the obstacles for the boy. Now, he thought, the rest was entirely up to him. On the pedestal, Louis became the epicenter of a swirling vortex of pure elemental energy. His mind was pulled away, transported to a vast, starry expanse that served as the mental space for his awakening. Opening his eyes, he found himself floating in the silent void, wondering what this strange and beautiful place was. His thoughts drifted back to a conversation a few days ago, when Cain had explained from a book that the elements were the very foundation of the world, created by the goddess. He remembered asking why humans had to awaken their powers when monsters were simply born with them. Cain had explained that monsters contain magic stones, which were the crystallized form of their single innate power. Cain then handed him a beautiful blue crystal, calling it a source of all power. He had used the example of a fiery wolf, a creature born with the innate magic of flame, and then a graceful mermaid, a being born from the very essence of water. Humans, Cain continued, were different. They could only awaken their power with the goddess's blessing, after being recognized by one of the elements. They didn't create magic from nothing, but instead learned to manipulate the elements all around them. Cain had tossed the crystal to his friend, telling him not to worry. Once an element recognized him, all he needed to do was train his mind and body. Holding the magic crystal, Louis had asked if the crystal itself was the elements. While packing a box of supplies, Cain had shaken his head. "No," he said, "everything in the universe is made of elements, everything that surrounds us." Back in the present void, a single orb of brilliant blue light materialized before Louis. He wondered if this meant the water attribute was the one that suited him. Confused but curious, he reached out his hand to touch the mysterious energy. The moment his finger made contact, his mind was flooded with visions of graceful mermaids swimming through the tranquil ocean depths. But the peaceful vision quickly twisted into a nightmare, revealing a monstrous kraken with terrifying, glowing red eyes. The shocking image sent a violent jolt through his consciousness. He clutched his head as a searing pain tore through his mind, the dark, overwhelming energy flooding his senses. Under the immense strain of the chaotic vision, the orb of power began to crack and shatter. The fragments did not vanish, but instead reformed into a strange, unstable sphere of raw, uncontrolled energy. From this chaos, a completely new and unfamiliar elemental crest was born. In the real world, the director's eyes widened in alarm as he sensed the dangerous shift in Louis' awakening. He watched as the vortex around the boy became wild and volatile, threatening to tear the temple itself apart. Louis was completely at the mercy of the power erupting from within him, unable to control it. The director had no choice but to intervene, his voice booming through the hall. "Goddess Barrier?" He summoned a divine, golden manifestation of the goddess herself, a powerful light meant to contain the chaotic energy. The radiant barrier enveloped the altar, attempting to seal the volatile power within a protective dome. On the temple floor, the ancient elemental magic circles flared to life, reacting to the incredible surge. The raw power continued to build, forcing the barrier to solidify into a cubical, divine seal. Overwhelmed by the backlash, Louis collapsed to the ground, groaning in agony. The students were now in a full-blown panic. One of them screamed that the ritual had gone completely out of control. The director's voice roared, trying to reach Louis through the chaos, telling him not to be swayed by the ominous energy. With gritted teeth, Louis fought to suppress the power, his expression a mixture of pained concentration and fierce determination. A resolute glow began to emanate from his eyes. He pushed himself to his feet, standing his ground, unwavering against the turbulent waves of power. As the initial surge finally subsided, Louis wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, clearly exhausted. That was close, he thought. He had almost lost his rationality. He then noticed it, a small multicolored orb of light floating calmly beside him. He stared in disbelief as a thought from his past life surfaced. Were elements the same as the elementary particles he had read about in science books? Holding the orb in his hand, he realized that if he could manipulate its frequency, he could awaken a truly special and unique attribute. Focusing his will, he began to manipulate the orb's manifesting frequency, attempting to tame its wild energy. The orb responded to his control, pulsating with a brilliant multicolored light that swirled under his command. As he succeeded, the symbols of the four core elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, appeared within the light. From across the hall, the director watched this unprecedented event with absolute astonishment. A colossal pillar of rainbow-colored light erupted from Louis's body, piercing straight through the temple's ceiling. The sheer force of the awakening sent a shiver down the other students' spines. One commented that his aura was far more terrifying than that of Niels, the Academy's top-ranked student. The director couldn't help but let out a hearty laugh of amazement. As expected of him, he thought, always exceeding expectations. Louis found himself back in his mental space, where the four core elements now hovered obediently before him. He understood now that the challenge was not just awakening them, but combining them into a single, cohesive power. With that, he began to absorb their energy. The elemental energies flowed like ribbons of light, weaving around his body. He realized that just like elementary particles, elements were in constant motion. By harmonizing that movement with his chi and breathing, the circulation would become smoother. He focused all the energy inward, forming a new theory. Perhaps he could create a magic crystal within his own body and use magic just like the monsters did. As this new understanding dawned on him, a delicate, snowflake-like crest materialized in the pupil of his eye. With a final surge of newfound power, he unleashed his awakening, and colossal shards of pure ice erupted from the ground around him. The ice spread at an impossible rate, consuming everything in its path. The director looked on, surprised by the final elemental attribute that Louis had manifested. The initial ice crystals then shattered, exploding outwards in a deadly shockwave of razor-sharp ice. Louis floated effortlessly at the center of the icy tempest, his power now fully realized. A smirk of approval crossed the director's face, deeply impressed by the raw power on display. With his arms outstretched, Louis was in complete command of the frozen chaos he had created. The terrified nobles tried to make a desperate run for it, but they stood no chance. The freezing wave washed over them in an instant, encasing them all in solid ice. In a matter of seconds, the Grand Temple had been transformed into a frozen wasteland, a testament to the birth of an unbelievably powerful mage. The temple was encased in a thick layer of ice, and the director realized he needed to intervene immediately. The sight was unbelievable. He knew he had to thaw out the students, and fast. He lifted a golden emblem, its surface gleaming as he began an ancient chant, calling upon the goddess of dawn. His voice rang out, commanding the cold to be destroyed and for flame to take its place as he unleashed his spell, Flame Barrier. An immense wave of heat exploded from the director, rolling through the frozen hall like a fiery tide. In a flash, the ice vanished into water, and the frightened young nobles stumbled to their feet, soaked and shivering. The intense fire battled the remaining chill, creating a dense cloud of steam that filled the entire temple. Yet, amidst the swirling chaos, Louis stood perfectly still. The scorching heat seemed not to touch him at all. When the steam finally began to thin, the true scale of the pandemonium became clear. Far away from the academy, a teacher looked up from his peaceful studies, jolted by the massive surge of power that came from the temple. Elsewhere, another man gazed toward the academy in alarm, wondering what could have caused such a powerful disturbance. Inside a different training hall, a student froze in place, her senses overwhelmed by the incredible aura that had just erupted. Back in the dripping, waterlogged temple, the director fixed his gaze on Louis, demanding to know the source of such immense power. For a moment, Louis was lost in his own mind, a space where pure elemental energy swirled around him like a vibrant storm. He held a new orb of multicolored light in his hand, realizing that the elements were just vibrating energies. He considered that if they vibrated together like chemicals, they might combine to form entirely new elements. He then felt how the wind and water elements had already blended, coursing through his body. He was unsure of what to do with this new sensation. A single thought cut through the internal chaos. This new power needed a name. A brief glimpse of another figure appeared, hinting at a future meeting. Snapping back to reality, Louis looked up at the director, his face an unreadable mask. The director gestured around at the flooded and damaged hall. He repeated his question, his voice firm, demanding to know what had just happened. The widespread damage was a clear testament to the raw, untamed power that Louis had just unleashed. The director recalled the glowing emblem, which vanished from sight. His stern expression made it clear that he would not drop the matter until he received a proper explanation. Meanwhile, the students he had just rescued were left moaning on the wet floor, completely forgotten in the tense standoff. Louis casually scratched the back of his head. He admitted that it looked like he had made a big mess, and thanked the director for saving him. The director spoke to Kylie, via magic instructing it to handle the cleanup as he prepared to return to his office. He then told Louis to come with him, assuming the boy must have questions of his own. The two walked together in silence through the now quiet and empty hallways of the academy. Later, in the director's office, Louis casually sipped a drink. The director congratulated him on his awakening, and then asked if he had truly awakened all 4 elemental attributes. Wiping his lips, Louis calmly confirmed that it was true. As proof, he effortlessly conjured the same multicolored orb of energy, letting it hover just above his open palm. The director leaned forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fascination. He acknowledged that Louis's talent was genuine. He pulled a heavy book from his shelf, explaining that it contained a theory he had researched, which might help Louis understand his magic. Handing the book to Louis, he advised him to use it as a reference to define his new power. He added that for fire and water, he would have to ask Faye and Miliana. His eyes never left Louis as he called out a single, sharp name. Kylie! In a flash of green light, Kylie materialized by his side, ready and loyal as always. The director then introduced the two of them. Kylie stood perfectly still, her gaze fixed straight ahead. The director informed Louis that she would be his protector from now on. Kylie suggested they move to a more secure location, worried that they might be overheard. They moved to a vast, empty chamber. The director explained that this was his personal training ground, its walls reinforced with powerful earth magic. Kylie wasted no time, asking Louis to show her the new element he had created. Louis formed the glowing energy in his hands again, explaining that he had discovered it purely by chance during the awakening ritual. He explained that by speeding up the vibrations of wind and water, a new element was born. The raw energy swirled between his palms as he spoke. He then presented the final result, a shimmering crystal of pure, biting cold. He declared he had named it the ice element. Watching from a short distance away, the director was stunned by the idea of creating new elements. Kylie stared in disbelief. She had never heard of such a thing being possible. A slow smile spread across her face. Her disbelief turned into a challenge. She lunged toward Louis, eager to experience this new power for herself. The two immediately engaged in a fierce spar, the air around them crackling with the force of their magic. Kylie managed to block a punch charged with ice, but a sharp, numbing cold shot up her arm. Louis's attack was relentless, his fists glowing with a powerful and overwhelming energy. The force from his next punch was so great that it whistled past her face, missing by mere inches. She was thrown back, shocked by his power. She realized with alarm that her own movements were becoming sluggish. As she regained her balance, she saw a shard of ice clinging to her arm. She understood now that this was the power of the ice element. While summoning a flame in her other hand to counter the cold, she called out to the director, asking if fusing 2 elements had ever been done before. He answered that it had not. Since magic was first discovered, countless people had studied its secrets. Throughout history, many geniuses had dedicated their entire lives to magic, but not a single one had ever succeeded in fusing elements. He went on to explain that in their world it was normal for a person to control only a single element. Only a very small number of people were ever born with the ability to control two. He continued, saying that even the most powerful saint in all of history could only command 3 elements. A memory of the saint being overwhelmed by a dangerous power surfaced. She too had tried to fuse 2 attributes, but she had failed. The director recalled that her mind simply could not handle the immense strain of the process. Back in the present, Louis realized the implication. No ordinary human should have been able to do what he had just done. The director confirmed his thought. He knew that to make elements resonate like that, one needed a will strong enough to survive what was basically a suicide attempt. The director explained aloud that accelerating the elements required an immense willpower to guide them and safely release the energy outside the body. If someone tried to guide multiple elements at once without that control, the energies would collide inside them, resulting in certain death. A small, simplified image of Kylie appeared, illustrating the grave danger of such a mistake. A look of pure awe finally settled on Kylie's face as the full weight of the situation sank in. Both she and the director shared the same thought. This boy's potential was so great, it might even rival that of a saint. The lingering heat of their spar still hung in the air. Not yet satisfied, Kylie's fighting spirit ignited once more, her battle aura flaring to life as she readied herself for another round. Her hair whipped wildly around her as she channeled her power, her eyes glowing a fierce red. "One more time!" she roared, her voice echoing with an eagerness to continue the fight. She lunged toward Louis, and their fists crashed together in a blur of fire and ice. The force of their blows sent shockwaves rippling through the training hall. Watching from the sidelines, the director observed the exchange, his mind lost in thought about what he was witnessing. A memory from his own days as a student surfaced. He recalled his old teacher's words, a hypothesis on how one might possibly handle multiple attributes at the same time. The theory proposed only 2 ways. One must either obtain a body like a dragon's, durable enough to withstand the collision of elements, or channel magic through crystals, just as monsters do. He remembered himself as a young man, hanging on his teacher's every word with rapt attention. His focus shifted back to the present, his eyes fixed on Louis. The boy's voice cut through his memories, asking what the results of that old research had been. The director closed his eyes, the memory, a heavy one. He explained that every experiment conducted within the Empire had ended in failure, until eventually, the entire concept was deemed forbidden. "Eventually, I gave up," he admitted to himself, "but I never imagined that this could happen. I never imagined—" Louis processed the information, a realization dawning on him. By circulating the different elements through separate pathways in his body, he had naturally avoided the violent collision that had doomed the research. A sharp kick from Kylie snapped him out of his thoughts. "Don't get cocky," she warned, her tone suddenly serious. "Do you understand what this means?" His expression turned grim as the reality of his situation sank in. "I do," he answered in a low voice. A dark memory flashed through his mind, a vision of his former self, broken and helpless on the floor with an overturned wheelchair beside him. Looming over the painful scene was a sinister, shadowy figure, the same one who had stolen his thesis and all his research in that past life. Kylie landed gracefully, her playful demeanor gone and her gaze intense. "If word of your unique ability gets out," she said, "there is no telling what might happen to you." She explained that the director had ordered her to protect him. "But I don't like trouble," she added firmly, "so don't do anything unnecessary." Louis met her serious gaze with one of his own. "Understood," he said. "I'll just say I awakened to the water attribute, and the ice is just an application of that." Hearing the boy's quick thinking, the director couldn't help but smirk, impressed by his composure. All right." Louis then turned his attention back to Kylie, a confident smile replacing his serious expression. "My willpower is stronger than anyone's. Teacher, attack me as you like." Her eyes blazed with excitement. Accepting his challenge, she launched herself toward him like a fiery comet. Louis stood his ground, unafraid. He called upon his power with a single, clear shout. "Water!" In his open palm, a brilliant sphere of blue water began to swirl into existence. The sphere erupted outward, releasing a massive wave of power that collided with Kylie's fiery assault, stopping it dead in its tracks. She cried out in surprise, completely caught off guard by the unexpected force of his new technique. The director's eyes widened in utter disbelief. This is—" he stammered, unable to process what he was seeing. Louis presented the result of his efforts to the stunned onlookers, revealing a new form of his water element. He gave it a name, water element, SUPERIONIC ice form. The director was completely awestruck. He leaned in closer, his mind racing to comprehend the phenomenon. "This isn't just ice," he exclaimed. Kylie was equally baffled. "How did you turn ordinary water into that?" she wondered aloud. "Its properties can be changed by changing the pressure," Louis explained calmly. A proud hand landed on Louis's shoulder. It was the director. There's still so much unexplained in this world. Come see me whenever you like. I'll teach you how to use your power properly. If you make new discoveries, I'll give you credit too. Kylie looked at him with concern. Are you serious? What just happened could be a mere coincidence, you know? It's not written in any magic books. The director met her gaze. The magic written in books is also said to be the product of coincidence, he replied. I want to take my chances on this student. Kylie sighed, conceding the point. If you say so, director, I'll accept it. But he's a high-maintenance student. A maelstrom of golden flames then erupted around her body, a clear testament to her own immense power. I'll protect him, she declared with finality. With that, she vanished within the sphere of fire. Once Kylie was gone, the director turned back to Lewis. You should also get going, as classes start tomorrow. He then handed the boy a small vial containing a mental recovery potion. Louis accepted the potion, surprised. He hadn't known there were potions that could restore the mind. Later, carrying a book from the director, Louis walked through the dormitory corridors to his room. The recovery potion had left him feeling wide awake, so he decided he would meditate until morning. He opened his door but stopped short, surprised by what he saw. Inside, his roommate was still awake, even at this late hour. Louis stepped into the room and asked if the other boy had been waiting up for him. He then offered his sincere thanks for the help earlier that day. The director told me a rare artifact was set up to prevent my awakening, Louis explained. But how did you notice it? Without a word, his purple-haired roommate held out a sleek black card. Louis took it. His eyes widened as he read the elegant gold lettering. Gandhis Trading Company. He looked up in understanding. So that's why you're so knowledgeable. A new concern crossed his mind. Won't you be targeted by troublesome people for helping me? He asked. His roommate didn't answer the question, simply offering his own thanks in return. He then shut the door, leaving Louis alone in the hall. A merchant son, Louis thought. I might need your help in the future. The scene shifted to the bustling training hall of the Candria Arcanist Academy. A mountain of a man with a wild blonde pompadour struck a dramatic pose. Hello students, I'm Teacher Derek. I'll be your physical training instructor. He flexed a ridiculously sculpted bicep. And I will be training you with my guidance in the fundamentals of the martial arcane. A smug grin spread across his face as he looked over the new students. You'll all get perfect bodies. The students were far less enthusiastic. This teacher, is he insane? One whispered. Isn't he creepy and weird? Another added. But Louis's eyes sparkled with admiration. He knew the teacher was right. A strong body and mind were the very foundation of the martial arcane after all. Suddenly, Derek's keen eyes landed on Louis, who had just arrived with Kane. In a blur of motion that defied his size, Derek appeared directly behind the two boys, startling them both. He leaned in close, his face positioned right between theirs. Perfect, he breathed. Getting uncomfortably close, the instructor took a deep, appreciative sniff. He placed a hand on Louis's chest. Every part from head to toe is thoroughly trained. It's truly a masterpiece created by the goddess. I love students who train hard. Louis's brain simply short-circuited, unable to process the sheer weirdness of the situation. Derek then turned his intense gaze to Kane. Not a shred of muscle? He observed. Kane nervously asked what he was talking about. But Derek just brushed the question off with a casual, nothing. He finally released a thoroughly traumatized Louis and addressed the class. This is a basic physical fitness class. Now everyone, follow me. Let's have your seniors demonstrate how to use the training equipment. One of the senior students scoffed mockingly. This year's freshmen look so unreliable. They even lost to commoners, not just the great families, another sneered. As a group of arrogant-looking seniors pushed past the newcomers, their leader sneered over his shoulder. We'll show them the gap between an apprentice and a fighter. After all, it's our tradition, another chimed in. Teacher Derek told the seniors to stop chatting and show the freshmen what to do right away. One of the leader's companions came forward. I'll go first then, he said. He approached a heavy-looking chest press machine. He grabbed the handles, explaining that the machine's weights were enhanced with earth magic as his muscles strained against the immense resistance. The display showed the weight, a staggering 1 ton. He grunted with effort as he pushed the handles. The other students were shocked by the display of strength. Whoa! He's lifting 1 ton so casually? Nearby, a girl spun inside a giant human-sized wheel powered by a glowing magic circle. Even though it was spinning incredibly fast, she didn't lose her balance at all. Another student sprinted on a treadmill at an impossible speed, wearing heavy boots that weighed 250 kilograms. Teacher Derek watched them all with a satisfied smile. All right, practice. Be careful not to get hurt. A freshman then tried the chest press machine. He strained with all his might, his face turning red with the effort. It won't budge, he groaned in frustration. All around the gym, freshmen collapsed, defeated by the impossibly difficult training equipment. The student who tried the super treadmill was sent flying, crashing hard onto the ground. The seniors laughed cruelly at the struggling first years. Hey, one sneered at a fallen student, Were you spoiled by your mommy? I had expectations for you. Suddenly, one of them pointed, his voice filled with disbelief. There is a monster among the freshmen. All eyes turned to Louis, who was now sitting at the same machine. The weight on the display was set to a mind-boggling 10 tons. Tell me this is a joke, a senior stammered. With a powerful grunt, he didn't just lift the weight, he dominated every machine he touched, causing the nearby treadmill to smoke from the speed. The giant wheel began spinning so fast that it created a small tornado inside the gym. The rest of the students could only stare with their mouths agape, completely shocked at the chaos Louis had just unleashed. Impossible! One of the seniors exclaimed in awe. He didn't even use any enhancement magic. Just then, another student pointed toward a different freshman. It was Neil. Veins bulged on his forehead as he exerted every ounce of his own incredible strength. The weight on Neil's training machine climbed, finally stopping at an incredible 15 tons. But that wasn't enough for him. He picked up 2 heavy blocks, each weighing 10 tons, and began running on the large treadmill with surprising ease, as if it were just a light morning jog. The other students watched, completely stunned. They could not believe what they were seeing. When he decided his warm-up was over, Neil casually dropped one of the massive blocks. The force of its landing sent a cracked spiderwebbing across the solid floor. He flexed his muscles, a triumphant look on his face, as he turned to Louis. He told Louis to ignore the others and use this moment to prove which of them was stronger. Louis, however, remained unimpressed. To him, this was just a basic training session, nothing to get excited about. He had no interest in such a pointless show of strength. Louis's calm demeanor did not escape the notice of the older students. The seniors now focused their attention on him. One of the seniors, his face twisted with anger, pointed directly at Louis. He warned him not to get arrogant just because he was strong, and demanded to know his attributes. In that moment, a powerful energy burst from Neil, swirling with the essence of fire and earth. A nearby senior gasped in shock, realizing that Neil possessed 2 attributes. The leader of the seniors was equally stunned. He could not believe a commoner could have dual attributes. Neil turned his intense gaze toward Louis and asked if he had awakened his powers as well. In response, Louis simply held out his hand, where a small pool of water appeared. He calmly stated his attribute was water. The senior leader exploded with laughter. He pointed at Louis, mocking him for having the water attribute and calling it completely useless. His friends quickly agreed, boasting that compared to their own powerful attributes, water was insignificant. Louis simply asked what was so funny about his attribute. Miliana, who also had the water attribute, explained to him that its fighting style was limited. The only real attack it offered was a move called Aqua Blade. She added that it was mainly used for defense and helping others. Because of this, many people considered it a weaker attribute. Louis looked down at the water swirling in his palm, realizing for the first time that his power was seen as inferior. The seniors kept laughing, telling him that no matter how strong he was physically, his future was doomed with the water attribute. They reminded everyone that no in history has reached Grandmaster with water attribute. They jeered that the best he could hope for was to be a quiet supporter for his teammates. As Miliana grew worried, Faye gently told her not to pay attention to their words. With a serious look, Louis spoke up, questioning if becoming a master was truly the highest a water user could ever achieve. The seniors gave him a thumbs down, confirming that it was common knowledge. They sneered at him, saying that commoners were truly ignorant. Louis's friends could not stay silent any longer. They shouted at the seniors to stop, calling them narrow-minded and ignorant. Soon, both sides were yelling insults back and forth, filling the training hall with noise. The senior leader then approached their teacher, Derek. He reminded him that the seniors were there to give the first years a demonstration. He suggested that the best way to do this was through endurance training. He explained that taking an opponent's attacks on purpose was a great way to improve both one's control over magic and their physical strength. With that, the senior leader formally proposed a sparring match between the students. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Louis, promising to show him just how useless the water attribute really was. Kane approached Louis with a word of warning. The senior leader was Sheath's older brother and would surely try to hurt him badly to get revenge for his sibling. Louis turned to the teacher and declared that no attribute was better or worse than another. Derek asked if this meant he was accepting the challenge. Louis clenched his fist, his expression filled with resolve. He announced that he would fight the seniors to prove his point. A wide, malicious grin spread across the senior leader's face, pleased that he was getting the fight he wanted. Kane called out to Louis in concern, but Louis simply told him not to worry. Derek crossed his arms and gave his permission. He allowed them to use magic and told them to show everyone what their powerful bodies could do. With a single command, he announced the start of the match. A dark laugh escaped Neil's lips as his fighting energy exploded in a wave of fire. He was thrilled to finally have a real fight. He positioned himself in the middle of the hall, his body covered in flames, completely ready for battle. He grinned, his eyes glowing with power, and taunted his opponents to come at him. Another senior scoffed and turned away from Neil. He decided he would deal with the dual attribute user after he finished off the boy with the water attribute. He started gathering his own magical energy. As he prepared his move, a brilliant golden light surrounded his body. Louis watched the display, his expression calm and untroubled. Suddenly, a thick layer of rock formed around the senior's body as he called out the name of his technique, Earth Armor. He then shot forward like a cannonball, aiming straight for Louis while yelling insults. But before he could reach his target, Neil appeared in a blur of motion, blocking the attack with a flaming punch. The collision was powerful. The Earth Armor shattered into pieces, and the senior was thrown backward through the air. His friends could only watch, their mouths open in shock. Neil's fist still smoking from the impact, he mocked him, saying that a direct fight clearly was not his strength. The senior gritted his teeth, his broken armor falling away around him. He swore he would kill the younger student. The purple-haired leader saw his opportunity and shouted to his friends. He called Neil troublesome and ordered them all to attack him at once. With a loud shout, the group of seniors rushed toward Neil. Neil only laughed, enjoying the challenge. As his power swelled, the force of it ripped his shirt to shreds. He brought his arms up to shield his head from the barrage of attacks coming his way. His eyes shone with excitement. He barely felt the blows landing on him. In a swift move, he caught an incoming kick from one of the seniors. He then used the captured student as a weapon, slamming him into another attacker. The force of the impact sent both seniors tumbling across the floor of the training hall. The Earth Armor user quickly recovered and circled behind Neil, preparing a powerful punch. He noted that Neil's back was completely unguarded. His fist connected solidly with Neil's back. A smirk appeared on the senior's face as he wondered if the attack had been successful. But to his shock, the rocky armor around his own fist began to crack and fall apart. The senior cried out in pain as blood began to seep from his now injured hand. Neil had blocked the punch without even turning around, using his own earth magic to create armor on his back. He mocked his attacker, comparing the powerful blow to a mosquito bite. The Earth Armor user stared at his broken fist in disbelief. He realized Neil had used magic to defend only one part of his body. For a freshman, his control over magic was as good as an apprentice's. Neil wasted no time. He spun around and delivered a powerful kick to the senior's chest. The force of the blow sent the senior flying through the air past Derek until he slammed hard against the wall. This time, the senior did not get back up. Derek looked at the fallen student and used him as an example, reminding everyone not to forget the fundamentals. He warned them that if they did, they could end up just like him. Louis watched the fight unfold, carefully studying every movement. He found the display of power terrifying and knew he could not afford to look away for even a second. Meanwhile, the blue-haired senior girl used a gust of wind to propel herself into the air, heading toward Louis and his friends from one side. At the same time, the blonde senior girl attacked from the other direction, her fist glowing with fiery energy. Kane stepped forward, declaring that as long as he was there, he would not let them interfere. Faye joined him, suggesting a battle of strength between fellow fire users. Kane targeted the wind user and charged forward to meet her. Faye, in turn, locked onto the blonde girl as her opponent. Louis watched the chaos around him with a confident smile. It was finally time for the main event. The final confrontation began as Louis and Sheath's older brother faced each other, their eyes locked in a tense stare. Sheath's brother faced Louis, his voice dripping with arrogance. He announced that as the heir of the Harry family, he would teach Louis a lesson about the pride and dignity of nobles. Without waiting for an answer, he stomped his foot hard. The ground cracked, kicking up dust as he vanished in an instant. He reappeared high in the air, shooting down towards Louis with incredible speed. A swirling green energy gathered in his hands. He roared the name of his attack, "Gale Penetrate!" A massive blast of piercing wind shot from his palms, hurtling directly at Louis. The senior leader watched with a cruel grin, screaming for the attack to tear Louis into shreds. But Louis remained completely calm, raising his hands to meet the powerful blast head-on. In a flash, a massive, jagged wall of solid ice erupted from Louis's hand, completely blocking the senior's attack. The senior's eyes widened in pure disbelief as he stared at the impossible wall of ice. His powerful wind magic vanished against the ice. He quickly leaped backward, putting distance between them. He landed hard, looking at the frost that now covered his hands. He stammered in shock. Wondering if this ice was a form of water magic, Louis lowered his arm, a shield of ice still swirling around it. He calmly confirmed that it was, in fact, an advanced use of water magic. Miliana, a fellow water user, watched the scene unfold, completely stunned by this revelation. She could only whisper Louis's name, her eyes wide with a mix of amazement and confusion. The other seniors fell into chaos. They couldn't believe what they heard, shouting that a water user creating ice was never heard of. Hearing them, the senior leader worried that they were about to lose face completely. He then noticed Neil, who was now wildly headbutting other senior teammates. The leader scoffed at the sight. The senior leader quickly moved to stand directly in front of the rampaging Neil. Neil's fist burst into flames as he taunted the leader, asking if he was the next punching bag. While dodging a fiery uppercut from Neil, the senior leader provoked him with a taunt of his own. A crazed, joyful grin spread across Neil's face in the middle of the chaotic fight. the entire training hall had become a storm of combat, with students clashing and magical blasts exploding everywhere. Kane leaped through the air, dodging a punch from his classmate Neil and telling him to calm down. The senior leader used his wind magic to dash toward Louis, cleverly leading the enraged Neil right to him. Neil jumped high into the air, yelling in frustration. He demanded the senior stop running and fight him properly. Neil landed with a powerful crash where Louis had been standing just a moment before, but Louis had already moved. While Louis was still in the air from his dodge, the senior leader launched a kick powered by wind. In an instant, Louis formed sharp icicles on his arm, stopping the kick cold. He mocked the leader for his talk of pride, only to resort to a surprise attack, calling nobles worthless. The senior leader simply smirked at the insult. He scoffed that he had only made the correct decision to win. Louis now found himself trapped, about to be sandwiched between the senior leader and Neil. As Neil lunged forward, Louis twisted his body and dodged the attack. He landed on the ground, thinking to himself that a 2-on-1 fight was tough. Not giving Louis a moment to breathe, the senior attacked from above. But Neil slammed his shoulder into the leader, pushing him away and yelling at him not to interfere. The leader gritted his teeth, blood dripping from his mouth as he called Neil a crazy bastard. Neil turned back to Louis, announcing that the nuisance was now gone. He declared it was time to settle their fight and unleashed a furious barrage of punches. Derek observed from the sidelines, cool and analytical. Louis was moving quickly in a small space, dodging all of Neil's attacks with ease. He was a true fighting genius. He even thought Louis might one day surpass William. Louis's own eyes narrowed as he analyzed Neil's wild fighting style, suddenly spotting his weakness. In a split second, Louis moved. He blocked one of Neil's punches and struck back with a swift blow to his throat. Neil cried out in pain. Louis held his fist firm, his voice calm as he stated that this should be enough to stop him. Suddenly, Faye shouted a warning from the side, telling him to watch out. Neil's pain instantly turned to rage. He grabbed Louis's arm, his eyes burning with fury. His body erupted in a pillar of fire. He roared with manic joy, thrilled that Louis was finally fighting back seriously. He charged forward, unleashing a devastating flaming headbutt straight at Louis's head and screaming for him to face the pain. Neil's face was a mask of pure battle joy as his powerful attack made contact. Louis spat a single drop of blood, but his eyes were clear. He calmly noted that Neil had clearly crossed a line and broken the school rule about intentionally harming others. A powerful wave of blue energy then erupted from his body. Suddenly, Neil found himself caught in a vortex of swirling water, but he knew this alone wasn't enough to stop him. A grin spread across Neil's face as he remembered the teacher telling them to show off their proud bodies. He braced himself, refusing to back down. He declared that he wouldn't run or hide from this. Louis's power surged, and the water swirling around Neil began to rapidly freeze into solid ice. In an instant, the powerful fire user was completely trapped inside a prison of thick, solid ice. Trapped, but not defeated, Neil's insane grin remained. He thought the feeling of pain was amazing. He then punched the ice, encasing his own hand, shattering it completely and freeing his arm. With a wide grin and eyes blazing red, he declared that by fighting Louis, he could become even stronger. The memory took him back to his childhood, to a time when he was just a young boy drinking from a river. His thirst was interrupted when he found himself surrounded by a pack of vicious, red-eyed wolves. He turned toward the animals, quietly wondering what pain truly was. Without hesitation, the wolves lunged, a snarling, snapping mass of teeth and claws. But even as a child, Neil was a fighter. He met their attack with his bare fists, matching their ferocity with his own. The wolves sank their teeth into his flesh, drawing blood, yet he refused to yield. He grabbed one by its jaws, his face a mask of pure defiance. A primal scream escaped his lips as his own eyes began to glow with a feral light. With raw strength, he tore the wolf in half. A sinister grin spread across his bloodied face. He understood then that pain was simply proof that he was alive. He looked down at his wounded arm, believing that this pain only made him stronger. His mind settled on a brutal truth. Only the strong were allowed to live. And so, he began to crave more. Back in the present, Neil shattered the ice around his hand. His eyes blazed with that same familiar childhood fire. His voice was raw with power as he screamed for more pain. He stomped his foot, shattering the ground beneath him and launching himself toward his opponent. He roared Louis Kirill's name as he flew through the air. His body wreathed in flames. He yelled that they were the same kind of monsters, both thirsty for power. Louis prepared to meet the assault, his own body swirling with icy energy. Louis managed to parry the attack, but Neil was relentless, immediately pressing forward with another fiery blast. Neil's eyes were wide with madness, completely lost in the thrill of the battle. Louis answered with a swift kick to Neil's face. The blow barely slowed him. Neil was on him again in an instant, a grin of pure bliss on his face as he screamed for more. The two fighters exchanged a flurry of blows, becoming a whirlwind of fists and feet. Watching from the sidelines, Faye and Kane were stunned. They both worried that Neil would be killed at this rate, and Faye insisted they had to stop him. But Neil was far from finished. Bellowing that he was not done yet, he charged forward once more. Louis dodged the attack, realizing Neil was completely out of control. He wondered how he could possibly stop him. He decided something more drastic was needed. With a determined shout for Neil to calm down, Louis unleashed a much more powerful attack. As he called out, "Ice Tempest," a massive wave of jagged ice erupted from the ground, surging toward Neil. In an instant, Neil was trapped once again, his entire body encased in a prison of crystalline ice. Even frozen solid, a crazed laugh escaped him. As he mocked the attempt, his body began to glow with an intense heat from the fire magic within. Flames erupted from within the ice, shattering his frozen prison from the inside out. Derek watched in disbelief, muttering to himself that things were finally getting interesting. Neil broke free completely, roaring that he would not go down so easily. His furious eyes locked onto Louis as he dared him to come on. Just then, an explosive burst of power came from nowhere. Someone struck Neil on the head, slamming him hard into the ground. Louis could only look on, shocked by the sudden intervention. It was teacher Kylie. She stood over Neil's unconscious body, having knocked him out cold. Adjusting her glove, she calmly told the unconscious boy that he had gone too far, calling him a muscle idiot. Derek, standing beside her, was completely captivated. He whispered, blushing, that she had become even more beautiful since he last saw her. He commented on the irresistible power coming from her and moved uncomfortably close. When he reached for her, she swatted his hand away, snapping at him not to come any closer. She called him an idiot and reminded him of the director's orders. Derek insisted he had not forgotten, claiming he was just trying to bring out Neil's potential through the fight. Kylie then sharply reminded Derek that she had her own orders from the director to protect Louis, and that he should not forget it. She then informed Derek that the director wanted to see him in his office after class. Derek sighed, figuring he was probably in for another lecture, but then his smile widened. He remarked that it looked like things would be fun. He glanced over at Louis, adding that it would be especially fun with him in the picture. Derek walked over to the still unconscious Neil and scolded him to get dressed. He warned that if Neil rampaged naked again, he would deduct his credit points. Neil groaned as he came to, holding his head. He realized he was no match for a master-ranked fighter yet. If his clothes kept getting torn, he would go bankrupt buying new ones, forcing him to hunt monsters to make money. Just then, a bell rang, its sound echoing through the training hall. Derek's voice boomed across the hall, announcing that morning training had ended. He told the students to get ready for their classes. He continued, saying he was sure they all now understood what kind of place the academy was, and that crying was not an option. As Jess, the older brother of Sheath, and the other seniors were leaving, Kane put an arm around Louis. He told him it had been over 100 years since a freshman had beaten a senior at the academy. Louis looked confused, mentioning that he had not read anything about that in the book. Kane excitedly explained that it had only happened 3 times before, and that several grandmasters had emerged from those specific freshman classes. This made Louis curious, and he asked when it had happened. Kane told him the most recent time was the year his own father had entered the academy. Pointing a finger in the air for emphasis, Kane added that his father's class had apparently beaten their seniors as well. Louis simply said he understood, though his eyes looked blank. Elsewhere, one of Jess's friends admitted that the 2 freshmen were really strong. He suggested that perhaps they should deal with them secretly. Jess, however, told him not to worry. He said that geniuses appeared every once in a while, and there was no need to rush, as they would have plenty of chances for revenge. He reasoned that no matter how strong the freshmen were, they were still just citizens of the Empire, and as nobles, it was they who ultimately controlled their fate. Faye asked Miliana what she thought of Louis' technique, remarking on his incredible talent for water magic. She suggested Miliana could also become stronger if she learned from him. Miliana recalled his technique and told Faye there was no way she could copy something so mysterious and never before seen. She looked down at her hands with a troubled expression, murmuring that she needed to find more ways to use water for attacks. Faye tried to reassure her, telling her not to worry so much since she was still only 16. Miliana clenched her fist, her resolve hardening. She insisted that she had to, for the sake of her family. Just then, Faye spotted Louis nearby. She called out to get his attention, announcing that Miliana had something to talk about as she shoved her friend forward. The other students immediately started whispering amongst themselves, wondering if it was a confession of love. Louis walked up to the flustered Miliana and kindly asked what she wanted to talk about. Faye jumped in, asking if he would be willing to teach Miliana the water magic he had used earlier. A warm smile spread across Louis' face. He said he did not mind at all, stretching his hand out to her and reminding her that they were friends. Miliana repeated the word friend in a quiet, thoughtful tone. Her reaction seemed to confuse Louis. Clasping her hands together, she looked him straight in the eye. She said that someday she might cause trouble for him, and asked if he would still not regret helping her even then. Louis offered a disarmingly warm smile, assuring her that he would never betray a friend. His kind words, however, seemed to have the opposite effect. A shadow fell over Miliana's face as she muttered that she did not want to involve him. Suddenly overwhelmed with emotion, she turned and bolted away, ignoring Faye as she called out her name. Faye offered a quick apology to a confused Louis before running after her friend. As they disappeared from sight, Louis watched with a thoughtful expression, wondering what had just happened. He approached Kane, asking if he knew anything about Miliana's situation. Kane explained that Miliana was the only daughter of the Royce family and the granddaughter of the Grand Master. When her grandmother was alive, the family had been prosperous. But after her grandmother passed away, their power and influence had apparently faded. Kane added that he did not know much else, suggesting Faye would have more information. Louis then turned to Kara, who was standing beside him, and asked if he knew anything more. Kara revealed that the Royce family had a conflict with the Arcanist Association. The pieces clicked into place for Louis. The trouble Miliana had mentioned must be her upcoming battle with the association. He asked Kara for more details, but Kara simply shook his head, admitting he knew nothing else. Louis scratched his head, realizing this was all the information he would get for now. He decided he would have to ask Faye or Miliana herself for the rest of the story. Later that day, the students gathered at the magic training ground for their afternoon classes. A new instructor announced that he would be teaching them how to handle magic and use martial arcane. He told them they could call him Teacher Sid. Louis watched the new teacher with an intense gaze. Kane noticed his friend's expression and asked what was wrong, reminding Louis how much he had been looking forward to magic class. Louis narrowed his eyes and muttered that he had a feeling Teacher Sid already disliked him. Sid's sharp gaze landed directly on the two talking students. He announced to the class that talking while the teacher was speaking was forbidden. Louis Kirill, Kane Aranica, he said coldly. -1 point for talking during my lecture. Teacher Sid looked Louis directly in the eyes, telling him that, unlike some muscle-headed fool, he won't tolerate indiscipline. His credits would eventually reach 0 if he kept breaking the rules. As the teacher walked away, he told Louis to learn more about noble manners and how to behave like a proper student. The clear bias made the veins on Louis's hands bulge with frustration. To demonstrate his power, Sid began to gather a massive amount of earth magic. He summoned a colossal knight made of solid rock, which towered over the assembled students. The freshmen could only stare up in awe, stunned by the sheer scale of the spell. But the teacher was not finished. With a smirk, he explained that to use martial arcane in real combat, one must master both magic and martial techniques. His hand erupted in a roaring flame. He told the students that to become a proper apprentice, they must first learn to manifest their magic power and create weapons. He continued, explaining that if they could cover their entire body with arcane armor, they could reach the rank of fighter. As he spoke, he conjured a crimson blade from his flaming hand. He then performed a complex fusion, combining his magic with his body and connecting the power through his mind. Fire wreathed the stone knight as the teacher slashed his energy blade toward the statue. The students gasped, witnessing the advanced technique firsthand. "That is a martial arcane," Teacher Sid declared. He told them they would all attack the stone knight, and the student who dealt the most damage would receive 5 credits. With a flick of his wrist, the stone knight began to repair itself. He then instructed everyone to form groups according to their attributes, noting that Neil, with his dual attributes, would not need a group. As for the water attribute users, he told them to practice their arcane armor on the side and help with warm-ups. As Louis and Miliana were grouped together, 2 other students began to snicker, mocking them for being dead weight. Miliana frowned, complaining that water attribute users were always forced to practice support techniques on the side, never getting the chance to attack. At this rate, she worried she would never become a Grand Master. His mind flashed back to a memory of a tiny Miliana following someone, determined to prove her strength to that person. Louis looked over at Miliana and asked her what was wrong. Blushing and flustered, she quickly denied that anything was amiss, insisting it had nothing to do with him. The students, including Louis and Miliana's group, began to practice their magic. Louis asked Miliana why she was so obsessed with attacking, reminding her that water had many important support roles. Miliana shouted back that she wanted to become a Grand Master and restore the Royce family. To do that, she insisted she must be able to both attack and defend. She argued that the goddess would not have created an incomplete attribute, so water must also have powerful attack magic. She looked down at a small dagger forged of water, lamenting that her magic seemed suited only for defense, lacking the raw power needed for an attack. One of the bullies taunted her, telling her it was almost his turn and that she should warm him up with an aqua shield. Miliana calmly manifested a swirling barrier of water around herself. The bully began to attack her shield with his wind magic. As her shield was torn apart, Miliana struggled, trying to focus more power into her defense. For Louis, the scene brought back the painful memories of his past life. He remembered being trapped in a wheelchair, completely helpless, as others mocked him for wanting to research martial arts when he could not even exercise. He remembered the shadowy figures who stole his research, telling him that someone so weak did not deserve glory. Their cruel laughter echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of his past powerlessness. Looking at Miliana, he saw a reflection of his former self, someone who knew their own weakness yet refused to give up on their dream. He thought that, just as he had with Cain, perhaps he could show her a new path. With a determined step, he began to channel his own power. An enormous wall of jagged ice erupted from the ground, forming an impenetrable barrier in front of Miliana. The bully's next attack shattered uselessly against the frozen fortress. Louis turned to the stunned Miliana, his gaze firm. He told her that he also believed in the potential of the water attribute, and asked her to watch his technique. A blush spread across Miliana's face. He then raised his hand, catching the teacher's attention. He called out, asking if he could also try attacking the statue. Sid scoffed, looking down at him with disdain. He warned Louis that if he failed to deal any damage, he would deduct his credits. Louis just smirked. He agreed to the terms, stating that he had thought of a good method to increase the attack power of water magic. The two bullies laughed at his claim, convinced he was just bluffing. They might have believed him if he had mentioned ice magic, but water was a different story. Ignoring them, Miliana looked at Louis with concern. She reminded him that the Stone Knight was fortified with magic ores and earth magic, and that a normal water attack could not even scratch it. He gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder, telling her it was fine and that he had an idea. He walked over to the giant Stone Knight that Teacher Sid had summoned. Kneeling down, he scooped up a handful of dust and small pebbles from the ground around its base. He explained that if one added a little water to this powder, and as he spoke, a trickle of magic flowed from his hand into the dust, and compressed it multiple times, it becomes harder than anything. The dust in his hand began to glow with an immense compressed energy. With 2 fingers pointed like a blade, he unleashed the compressed mixture of sand and water. A single beam multiplied into a storm of razor-sharp projectiles that filled the air. He lunged forward, unleashing the full force of his technique. Martial Arcane Aqua Cutter! Some students mocked the attack, saying that such weak-looking projectiles would not even leave a scratch. But just then, another student pointed toward the statue, his voice filled with terror, urging them to look closer. Even Teacher Sid's jaw dropped. Impossible. No way, he stammered, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The massive stone statue was instantly shredded into fine dust by the storm of high-pressure water blades. As the debris settled, Louis stood calmly in the quiet training ground. This, he stated, is the power of water magic. Later that night, Louis, Cain, and Kara walked through the academy grounds, the moon hanging high above them. Cain was still buzzing with excitement from the day's events. "You should have seen Teacher Sid's face after you got those 5 credits, he exclaimed, a huge grin on his face. It was priceless. With a smug laugh, Cain continued. The moment he saw your brilliant attack, his face turned pale like he'd eaten rotten bread, and as soon as class ended, he ran off like he was escaping. But during that time, Louis' mind was elsewhere. He had been so focused on developing his water magic that he hadn't even noticed the teacher's reaction. What a shame. Cain's tone turned more serious. He suggested they listen to Faye's idea, reminding Louis how hard she was working to help Miliana find a new path. He explained that Faye was even buying expensive mental recovery potions and other rare ingredients to support Miliana's training, a costly endeavor. Faye's plan was to rent out a private training room during their free time for special sessions with Miliana. "Isn't that good for you too?" Cain asked, nudging his friend. But when Kara revealed the costs, 30 gold for the room and a whopping 300 gold for a single potion, both Louis and Cain reeled back in shock. "That's expensive," Louis exclaimed. An idea sparked in Louis's mind. He turned to Kara with a sly look. "Hey, Kara," he said, "can I ask you a favor? There's a training mission in a few days, right?" As Louis put his plan into motion, the gears of fate began to turn, setting the stage for their next great challenge. The following day, the students gathered outside. Teacher Derek stood before them. "You are all growing rapidly," the muscular blonde man announced. "Your teacher is pleased." He informed them that from now on, they would be participating in the Academy's training missions. "This is both a duty and a chance to become stronger," he declared. The instructor explained that the Academy was connected to the Great Mondo Forest, a territory that was once ruled by powerful monsters and now serves as a border between great nations. The forest was still teeming with monsters, their glowing red eyes piercing the darkness. The deeper one ventured, the stronger the creatures became. In fact, the Academy was built there to protect the Empire from these very monsters. The training missions involved assigning students to hunt them down from time to time. The rewards were substantial. Magic crystals obtained from monsters could be exchanged for credits or other prizes. The student with the most gains would receive extra rewards, but he also gave a stern warning. However, if you act recklessly, challenge a strong enemy, and need to be rescued by a teacher, you will get -1 credit. The red-haired fighter grinned, wrapping his fists in bandages as a fire aura flared around him. "Monster hunting, huh?" he snarled. "Looks like I can finally go all out." Louis, meanwhile, was putting his own plan into action. He approached Faye and Miliana. "You're planning to train Miliana through real combat?" Faye asked. Louis confirmed it, stating that people only show their true ability when facing a real enemy. With a confident gesture, he proposed, "Let's form a team with the 5 of us." He argued that with their combined strength and teamwork, they could grow much more efficiently than by paying for an expensive training room. Faye turned to Miliana. What do you think? After a moment of hesitation, she looked at him with newfound determination and nodded. I agree. Louis clapped his hands together. All right. Their team was officially formed, ready to take on the forest together. Just then, the instructor's voice boomed again. Then, right away, you will take on your first training mission, together with the seniors. As he spoke, a group of older students approached, led by the imposing, tall, purple-haired man. The senior leader, Jess, stopped in front of Louis, his gaze cold and dismissive. We meet again, he said. Training missions always come with danger. Make sure you don't lose your lives. Louis just smirked back, completely unfazed. You don't need to worry about us, he replied coolly. People only grow by overcoming danger, right? The senior scoffed at the holic. The senior turned to his own group, his message clear. They said it themselves. Even if a fight starts, don't help them. His lackeys nodded in understanding. Understood. It was clear they had no intention of helping the freshman. Kane leaned in close to Louis, whispering a warning. The teacher will be watching, so they probably won't interfere directly, he said, but they might try to lead us deeper into the forest to fight strong monsters. Louis' smirk only widened. That's perfect, he whispered back. The stronger the monster, the more valuable the magic crystal, right? Kane could only sigh at his friend's reckless confidence. As the groups headed into the forest, they passed another team, the one led by the mysterious brown-haired man with the visor, a clear rival to Louis' crew. Their senior escort led them into the dense woods, their figures disappearing amongst the trees. Kane casually says, this area used to be Behemoth territory, but the Saints wiped them out. The monsters on the outer edge are only fighter class at most. Want to try fighting one? He scoffed at the idea of them taking on a fighter class monster. Trying to defeat one with a few apprentices, you're really overestimating yourselves, he sneered, completely oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, the ground shook as a massive, clawed paw slammed down, cracking the earth. The senior froze, his face draining of all color as he turned to see what had made the sound. Towering over them was a monster far beyond anything he had expected. A fighter-class grand bear, its eyes glowing with crimson rage. Without a second's hesitation, the so-called senior guide panicked, leaping into a nearby tree. This is perfect, he stammered, trying to save face. This level should be easy for you guys. I'll watch from here. The cowardly senior looked down, sweat pouring down his face. He knew this monster was unusually strong for the area, with high defense and stamina. He was certain the freshmen would struggle and be wiped out, but he had severely underestimated them. Down below, Louis gave the order, everyone prepare for battle. The 5 of them stood their ground, weapons ready, a united front against the beast. With a deafening roar that shook the trees, the grand bear charged. The team sprang into action. Faye led the charge, her massive blade wreathed in roaring flames as she leaped forward. Her fiery slash connected with the bear's chest, exploding on impact. At the same time, Kane zipped past, his daggers aimed at the monster's flank. The Kane spun through the air like a whirlwind, his dual daggers glowing with a sharp green energy. He unleashed a flurry of slashes like a tornado against the bear's thick hide. But the beast barely flinched. Kane landed, his eyes wide with disbelief. What toughness, he cried. His daggers, which could slice through steel, had only left shallow scratches. Enraged, the grand bear swung its massive paw, smashing the ground where Kane had just been standing and sending rock and debris flying. Now the monster's rage was focused on the nimble fighter. Just as the bear was about to land a decisive blow, an arrow blasted at its head, drawing its attention. Nice, Kara, Louis shouted. The archer had created the perfect opening. The distraction worked, but it also made the bear even angrier. It let out another furious roar, its glowing red eyes locking onto the group. This was the moment Miliana had been waiting for. Take this, she yelled, stepping forward as her staff pulsed with azure light. A powerful torrent of water shot from her staff, striking the bear with incredible force. But instead of pushing it back, the water flowed like a living serpent, wrapping tightly around the beast's arm and shoulder, restricting its movement. More and more water coiled around the bear's massive body, trapping it in a swirling vortex. The monster struggled, but the magical restraints held firm. This wasn't just simple magic. Miliana was combining her water attribute with advanced martial arts principles, a true martial arcane technique. With a powerful pivot, she unleashed her signature move, water flow, shoulder throw. Using the monster's own weight and momentum against it, she effortlessly hoisted the half-ton grand bear into the air and sent it hurtling through the forest. Louis and Faye watched in awe as the massive beast sailed overhead. Louis was amazed. What is that technique? He asked. Faye proudly explained. It's Miliana's original technique. It combines water magic and jujutsu. A proud smile spread across Louis' face. An original technique, huh? Interesting. He had seen her potential, and now, she was finally unleashing it. Without wasting a moment, he dashed forward. I can't lose either, he declared, moving to intercept the falling monster. The grand bear, still stunned from the throw, came crashing back down to earth. Louis met it head-on, his fist cocked back as a wave of pure power erupted from his body. The resulting impact was immense, sending a shockwave through the forest floor. But Louis wasn't done. As the bear was thrown into the air once more, he began to gather his own magic, showing them something they had never seen before. In one hand, a swirling orb of high-pressure water formed. In the other, a blazing ball of fire. He was wielding two opposing elements simultaneously. With intense focus, he brought the two orbs together, merging them into a single, unstable sphere of volatile energy that pulsed with blue and red light. He then launched the attack, sending the shimmering projectile flying towards the defenseless bear. The orb of condensed steam and fire slammed into the monster's chest. The result was a cataclysmic explosion. The superheated water instantly vaporized, creating a blast of high-pressure steam that tore through the monster from the inside out. The grand bear was slammed into the ground with enough force to create a crater, its tough hide rendered useless against the internal explosion. It lay defeated, steam rising from its wounds. The rest of the team could only stare in disbelief. Miliana was speechless. Such heavy damage to a grand bear with water magic? Even other attributes barely affect it. Louis landed gracefully, explaining his technique. It's water vapor. The steam produced when a ball of high-temperature compressed water explodes can burn the enemy and interfere with its breathing. Even if the skin is tough, internal damage cannot be ignored. Miliana looked down at her own hand, a new world of possibilities opening up to her. Internal damage, could I do it too? She wondered. Louis walked over, a smile on his face. Here, this, he said, tossing her a small pouch. Miliana caught it, her eyes widening in shock as she saw the contents. What is this? He held up his own hand, now adorned with 3 elemental rings. I asked Kara to order these magic rings. With them, you can use earth, fire, and wind magic too. I got the idea after seeing Teacher Sid. Now I can openly use multiple attributes. He had prepared a set for her as well, so please use it, he said. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Miliana slipped the rings onto her fingers, a silent thank you in her eyes. But their celebration was cut short. A massive fiery explosion erupted in the distance, followed by a frantic scream. Miliana, a massive explosion erupts in the distance, sending a shockwave of heat and force through the forest. A fiery pillar of destruction tears through the canopy, illuminating the sky with an ominous glow. Miliana is stunned by the raw magical power. This power is unbelievable, she stammers. She looks back at the smoldering remains of the grand bear, utterly baffled. The body of a fighter-class grand bear just blew away? Even their cowardly senior guide, who had been hiding in the trees, is paralyzed with fear by the sheer scale of the blast. But Louis's sharp senses are screaming a different kind of warning. Something is coming closer. The ground trembles as the forest itself seems to part, revealing a new, much deadlier threat. The senior guide's face pales, his eyes wide with terror as he recognizes the approaching figures. Ah, that is, a horde of monstrous ape-like beasts with manes of pure fire stampede into the clearing. Blaze Kong! He shrieks. The muscular beasts beat their chests in a display of primal fury, their collective roar shaking the very foundations of the forest. Huddled in the bushes, the team is frozen in place. What kind of monster is a Blaze Kong? Kane whispers, his usual confidence gone. The senior guide trembles, explaining, it's a monster that shouldn't be anywhere near the academy. For them to appear in a group, it's unbelievable. As if to prove his point, the Blaze Kongs descend upon the carcass of the grand bear, tearing it apart with savage glee. The rest of the team can only watch in horror, realizing the danger isn't just for them. Maybe the other students are in danger too, Kara says, his voice barely a whisper. Her fears are confirmed. Elsewhere in the forest, another group of students is completely surrounded, too terrified to even move. Their leader screams in desperation, "Why are Blaze Kongs here? You guys hurry and go get a teacher." But the teachers are already facing the chaos. Instructor Derek is seen effortlessly dispatching 2 students, a grim determination on his face as he moves to contain the threat. And in another corner of the woods, the fiery, red-haired fighter stands before a Blaze Kong, not with fear, but with a grin hungry for battle. He cracks his knuckles, a fighting aura flaring around him. "Heh, you want to fight me?" he snarls. "This is interesting." Meanwhile, a brilliant green energy flares through the air, alerting everyone. Another group of students makes a desperate retreat. "Run now!" another teacher yells. Louis pieces together the horrifying truth. If monsters that shouldn't be here have appeared, that means their simple training mission has just escalated into a full-blown catastrophe. The arrogant senior guide, who had been so dismissive earlier, finds himself face-to-face with one of the fiery beasts, and his bravado instantly vanishes. In a last-ditch effort, he screams out his trump card. S-Soil Armor! A golden, crystalline suit of armor encases his entire body, a defense he believed to be impenetrable. But to the Blaze Kong, it's nothing but a shiny shell, with a single contemptuous punch. The armor shatters like glass, the force of the blow creating a crater and leaving the student utterly defeated and twitching on the ground. The monster isn't done yet. It casually raises its leg, ready to crush his skull. The senior guide can only let out a terrified shriek, the reality of his own weakness crashing down on him. But out of nowhere, a massive wave of water magic slams into the Blaze Kong's face. It's Louis, coming to the rescue. Propelled by his magic, Louis sends the hulking beast flying backward, crashing through several trees. He lands and immediately barks orders to his team. Kara! Miriana! Take the upperclassmen and run. Without hesitation, Kara hoists the injured student onto his back, and with Miliana providing cover, they make a break for it. Louis, Faye, and Kane stand their ground, forming a rear guard. It's okay, Faye says with a confident smirk, I'll catch up soon. But the enraged Blaze Kong has recovered, and it's charging up a devastating fireball in its gaping maw. The trio's confidence evaporates as they see the sun-sized ball of destruction hurtling towards them. Kane's voice cracks as he yells the only thing he can. Dodge! They leap for their lives just as the fireball impacts, incinerating the ground where they stood moments before. As the others get to safety, Kane looks back at the enraged monsters. They're totally fired up, he says, trying to sound brave. Faye readies her polearm, her eyes burning with resolve. We have to work together to take them down. The battle reignites. A Kong unleashes a torrent of fire, but Kane uses Wind Magic Accelerate to become a green blur, easily evading the attack. A razor-sharp gust of wind slices through the air, aimed directly at the monster's head. Kane, his daggers glowing with wind magic, closes in for the kill. The monster roars, preparing to swat the nimble fighter out of the air. He unleashes his wind stab, but the beast is unbelievably tough, parrying the attack with its bare arm. Seizing the opening, Faye attacks from behind, her long polearm carving a deep gash in the monster's arm. The ape roars in pain. She soars into the air, her weapon enveloped in a vortex of roaring flames. With all her might, she brings the fiery blade down directly on the monster's head. She bellows the name of her technique, Ichrid Lance, Cremant Fall. The attack is immense, slamming the Blaze Kong face first into the ground and shaking the earth. In the crater, Faye spots the monster's core. Found it. It's a magic crystal. Focusing all her power, she prepares a finishing blow, her entire body erupting in a fiery aura. Sacred Lance. Pierce. A concentrated beam of pure, destructive energy shoots from her weapon, engulfing the downed monster. The resulting explosion is massive, sending a shockwave rippling through the forest. Faye lands, resting her polearm on her shoulder with a satisfied smirk. That's one down. But Louis' urgent voice cuts her short. Faye, don't let your guard down. Confused, Faye turns back to the smoke, just in time to see the Blaze Kong rising, another fire breath attack already charging. Instantly, Louis reacts, slamming his bandaged hand forward and summoning a towering wall of crystalline ice. Using his other hand, he sends trail of icicles toward the Blaze Kong. The ice flash freeze, completely trapping the Blaze Kong. The beast is now nothing more than a statue, frozen solid in a tomb of jagged ice. Faye wipes the sweat from her brow, her heart still pounding. Thanks, Louis. I didn't think that monkey was still alive. But behind the translucent ice, the Kong's eyes snap open, glowing with an unholy red light. With an earth-shattering roar, the monster flexes, and the massive ice prison explodes into a shower of frozen shards. To their absolute horror, the deep, fatal wounds on its body begin to steam and heal at a visible, unnatural rate. Kane is speechless. What? I've heard they were violent, but I've never heard of their wounds healing so fast. Louis feels a chilling sense of déjà vu. This feeling, it's like, the scene flashes to the red-haired fighter, a crazed look in his eyes as he brutally pummels another Kong. It's just like Neil back then. The monster lands a blow, but he just laughs it off maniacally. Ha ha ha, not even close! With his bare hands, he defeats the flaming monster, splattering blood everywhere. Even the powerful instructor Derek is being pushed back by the horde. This is really troublesome. Their wounds keep closing up. Something's wrong with these guys, he realizes, a grim look on his face as he understands the students have no chance. Back with our heroes, that grim reality is setting in. They are now completely surrounded by 5 of the regenerating monsters. Louis grits his teeth, sweat dripping down his face. This is bad. The 5 Blaze Kongs form a circle, their glowing red eyes fixed on their prey, cutting off all avenues of escape. In another part of the forest, Kara and Miliana lie unconscious on the ground, near the defeated senior guide. The monsters that took them down simply turn and walk away, their mission seemingly complete. The blonde student, battered and bruised, pushes himself up. A wicked, triumphant grin spreads across his face. Preparation complete. Now I'll just use those defective monsters, he says with a chilling smile, and finish him off. His plan is revealed. He was the mastermind behind the monster attack, all to eliminate Louis. As if hearing his command, the Blaze Kongs surrounding Louis begin to roar, their bodies glowing as they power up. Kane screams in disbelief. No way! Why are monsters using arcane armor? The monsters slam the ground in unison, creating a violent earthquake that throws the trio off their feet. Louis barely manages to regain his balance, but his eyes widen in pure terror at what he sees next. The Blazekongs aren't attacking with their fists or fire breath. They're gathering colossal spheres of raw, destructive energy. They're aiming to completely annihilate him. All 5 of them. His friends can only scream his name, helpless to intervene. The world turns white as the 5 cataclysmic blasts converge on Louis' position. A final apocalyptic explosion engulfs the entire section of the forest, vaporizing everything in an instant. Watching from a safe distance, the senior guide villain smirks, his eyes glinting with victory. Operation successful. Is this truly the end for Louis? Has his arrogant rival finally succeeded in eliminating him? The shockwave of the blast is felt across the entire forest, catching even the powerful instructor Derek off guard. The red-headed brawler Neil pauses his own savage battle, wondering what in the world could have caused such a massive explosion. But back at Ground Zero, the cataclysmic energy wasn't one of pure destruction. It was a defensive blast, sending razor-sharp waves of force outwards. As the dust settles, a swirling vortex of pure, condensed mana is all that remains. Kane and Faye can only stare in disbelief. "Look at that!" Kane yells, pointing at the impossible sight before them. And there, in the eye of the storm, floating calmly, is Louis. Completely unharmed. His eyes glow with an otherworldly blue light, crackling with an immense power he's kept hidden until now. His friends and the remaining monsters are frozen in place, utterly stunned by this insane display, so he really was hiding his true strength. Kane gasps, while Faye mutters, controlling mana over such wide range with willpower alone. That's something only a master or above can do. But even for Louis, this level of power takes a toll. Panting, he knows he can't maintain it for long. A beautiful yet terrifying snowflake pattern forms in his eye. He's done playing defense. Focusing all his mana into his bandaged hand, he roars, "Let's end this quick." He unleashes his breathing technique, Ice. A tidal wave of absolute zero energy erupts from his body. The Blazekongs, masters of fire, are instantly overwhelmed by the unnatural cold, their bodies beginning to flash freeze. The spell expands at an incredible rate, transforming the entire battlefield into a frozen wasteland in the blink of an eye. Louis effortlessly maneuvers through his own icy creation by creating an ice foothold on the slippery ground. He gathers his energy, preparing to wipe out the entire horde in one fell swoop. The once mighty Blazekongs now look like cornered animals, their primal rage replaced with pure, unadulterated terror. Louis lunges forward, giving a powerful punch into the chest of the monster, sending the monster flying backward, with ice crystals forming on its chest. Shockwave ripples thought the air. He moves like a phantom, easily weaving through the clumsy, desperate punch of a raging ape. With a single stomp, the very ground beneath their feet turns to treacherous ice, sending them sliding. He raises a crystalline wall, blocking a furious punch from the alpha of the pack. The monster's flaming fist is instantly encased in a block of unbreakable ice, trapping it completely. Seeing this, 2 more Kongs leap at him, hoping to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. But for the newly powered-up Louis, it's like watching the world in slow motion. He dodges between them and unleashes a circular vortex of razor-sharp ice. The monsters are shredded by the attack, their bodies battered and frozen by the assault. He moves faster than their eyes can track, creating after-images that surround the entire horde. Beneath them, a massive, complex magic circle materializes. 8 trigrams! From the lines of the circle, colossal pillars of ice erupt from the ground, skewering and trapping each and every monster. Their fiery manes are extinguished as they are sealed in tombs of jagged, translucent crystal. From high above the frozen forest, Louis descends for the finisher, Ice Soul. He unleashes a devastating flurry of attacks. Continuous palm strike. The rapid-fire barrage of pure ice energy slams into the crystal prisons, creating multiple layers of ice, trapping the monsters completely. The massive output of mana finally proves too much, and Louis collapses to one knee, panting heavily. He stands alone in a silent, breathtakingly beautiful, and deadly forest of his own making. The once unstoppable horde is now nothing more than a collection of frozen statues, permanently silenced. The battle is over. Louis has won, but the cost of revealing his true power is clear. Watching from the shadows, Brian trembles, not from the cold, but from sheer terror and rage. It's the same feeling again, there's no mistaking it. Faye and Kane can only gape at the result. The threat that almost killed them was wiped out in a single overwhelming move. As his power recedes, Louis feels a strange sensation. My wind and water mana, it's getting easier to control. Kane runs over and throws an arm around his friend. Nice work, Louis. I had no idea ice attribute techniques were that powerful. Faye rushes over, her usual composure gone. Come on, stop chatting and let's get out of here. If we get ambushed again, that's no joke. But Louis just smiles confidently. No, we're fine now, he says, looking up. The teachers came to help. As if on cue, 3 instructors are seen flying over the frozen forest, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. Brian grits his teeth from behind a tree. Damn, the backup arrived. He hits his chest with red energy in his hand, removing the evidence of magic used to agitate the monsters. The strain finally takes its toll, and he collapses, his mission a catastrophic failure. Suddenly, a powerful gust of green wind magic begins to blow through the frozen trees, clearing the air. A man in an elegant white cape descends from the sky. It's the Academy's principal. The students look up, recognizing their leader. The principal's magic gently lifts the other fallen students, ensuring everyone is safe. He approaches Louis's party with a serious expression. They quickly explain the situation. He took down several masterclass Blaze Kongs on his own. Without Louis, I don't know what would have happened. The principal looks at Louis, his eyes sharp with intrigue. Several masterclass on his own? Louis, however, senses something is wrong with the whole incident. More importantly, something about this feels off. Please look at this. He points to the head of one of the Blaze Kongs, perfectly preserved in a block of ice. The principal's eyes narrow, understanding the grave implications. For now, you all head back to the academy, he says, his tone grim. We'll handle the rest. Later, back in the city, the chaos of the forest feels a world away. Louis is at a local shop, buying a whole case of mental recovery potions. The friendly shopkeeper teases him, looks like you racked up quite a few credits. But you know overdoing it is bad for your body, right? Just as he's about to leave, a stern voice calls out. Louis, got a minute? It's Kylie. She walks with him through the streets, her expression serious as she gets straight to the point. She begins to explain the academy's findings. The principal examined the Blaze Kong corpses using alchemy and found traces of magic drug use and artificial modification. Turns out your hunch was right, she confirms. This whole incident was deliberately triggered by someone. She explains the political turmoil brewing in the kingdom. With the king aging and no successor named, factions are beginning to make their moves, and the principal is a key figure. A succession struggle? Louis realizes the attack wasn't just a random act of chaos. He flashes back to the battle, to how the monsters relentlessly focused on him. No, he thinks with chilling certainty. Those guys were definitely targeting me. The woman puts a reassuring hand on his shoulder. I'll keep investigating on my end. I'll help with anything I can. She turns to leave, giving him one last piece of advice. So keep getting stronger and live up to the principal's expectations. Louis looks down at the potion in his hand, her words echoing in his mind. Keep getting stronger, huh? He pops the cork, the simple action filled with newfound purpose. He downs the potion in one gulp, replenishing the massive amount of energy he expended. He lets the empty vial clatter to the ground, his focus entirely on the path ahead. With a confident smirk, he turns to leave. Of course, he says to himself, that's exactly what I intend to do. Meanwhile, in a dark and lavish room, Brian reports to a shadowy figure. Father, regarding the modified monsters, we confirmed an increase in combat ability. However, the results fell below expectations. He sweats, explaining that while most corpses self-destructed as planned, some were recovered by the academy. The figure remains silent, sitting leisurely in a high-backed chair. This is Duke Vaughn, Brian's father and the leader of the noble faction. Brian nervously continues, if Principal Aronian catches on to us, the Duke is unconcerned. Those test subjects were prepared by the Bhutan Empire. Even if she catches on, there's nothing he can do. He holds up a picture, his gaze cold and calculating. It's a photo of Louis. Brian clenches his fist in frustration. More importantly, is that boy really the child of the curse? In any case, he is a hindrance to the plan. The Duke simply raises a finger, a spark of dark magic at its tip. The picture of Louis instantly ignites, consumed by a sinister, magical flame. Duke Vaughn's red eyes glint with cruel amusement. A hindrance? He scoffs. He rises, lecturing his son. Do you step around insects when you walk? He's the cursed child who brings total destruction. If he's around, our secret weapon will be useless. He walks away, leaving his terrified son behind. He gives a final order. Send his information to the upper ranks of the Arcanist Association. We'll make use of the goddess's so-called advocates. The last remnant of Louis's picture turns to ash, a grim promise of what's to come. Disposing of the child of the curse is part of their job after all. Duke Vaughn smirks. The enemy of my enemy is my ally. After the harrowing events in the forest, Louis and his friends are back at the academy, engaging in a friendly training match. But this is no simple spar. Louis powers up, his entire body glowing with a cool blue aura, his hair and eyes shifting to match his overflowing ice mana. He's not holding back this time. Across the arena, his friend Kane, the dual-wielding dagger user, leaps into action, his blades crackling with vibrant green wind energy. Kane unleashes a powerful slash, but Louis is already one step ahead, effortlessly dodging the attack. Not slowing down for a second, Kane becomes a whirlwind of blades, tearing through in a dazzling display of speed and skill. But Louis moves like a phantom, easily weaving through the barrage of attacks, completely untouched. He closes his eyes, sensing every movement, every shift in the air with a preternatural calm. Kane presses his assault, but it's like trying to hit a ghost. Louis's evasive maneuvers are on a completely different level. Done with dodging, Louis prepares to counter. He gathers the frigid energy around his bandaged hand, forming a massive claw-like gauntlet of pure ice. But Kane sidesteps and a flaming spear comes from behind, creating a perfect elemental opposition. Fire versus ice. It's Faye. The two friends lunge at each other, their elemental powers colliding in the center of the arena. The resulting explosion of fire and steam rocks the entire Colosseum, a testament to their incredible power. But even as the primary attacks clash, Louis has already launched a secondary assault. He sends a spinning disc of razor-sharp ice flying from the side, while simultaneously dodging the main blast from the explosion. From his behind, a puddle of mud rises, trying to trap him. But Louis stomps his foot, and the very ground erupts in a wave of deadly ice spikes, aimed to trap his friends. The spikes form into a colossal wall of ice, trapping the mud. The wall holds firm, but Louis senses something more behind the attack, a flicker of heat that feels different. A massive explosion erupts, shattering the ice wall and engulfing the entire arena in a cloud of smoke and fire. As the smoke clears, Kane and Faye stand ready, panting but confident. "That was perfect," Kane smirks. "This time, we've finally won," Faye declares. However, Kara isn't so sure. He mutters to Miliana, "It's too soon to celebrate. Louis has probably already seen through our plan." And just as she says it, Louis' silhouette emerges from the smoke, completely unharmed. The crackling embers die out around him. He steps out with a confident smile, clapping his hands. "That was good, though," he says, his voice cutting through the silence. He begins to break down their strategy with frightening accuracy. "Kane, your hit-and-run tactics have gotten faster. And Faye, you boosted your spear's power by adapting your unarmed moves." He turns to the other two. "And most of all, Miliana, hiding Kara's item with mud was very clever." The mage and archer are shocked. Their hidden ace, a magical item they'd camouflaged, was discovered instantly. "If I hadn't noticed the abnormality with this cold sense," Louis explains, his aura still flowing, "I'd have been blown away in an instant." Kane slams his hand to his head in frustration. "So we failed again? And you're not even scratched. Looks like we still can't catch up to you." Faye is more curious than defeated. "Still, it's crazy you can sense movements using ki." "I've never heard of anything like that," she says, approaching him. Louis demonstrates, conjuring a small, snake-like wisp of blue mana in his hand. "It's a technique that uses the circulation of mind and mana," he explains, much to her amazement. He promises to teach them all how it works later. Miliana pulls out a recovery potion for him. "I think this sometimes, Louis," Miliana says thoughtfully. "Like you're not from this world." The comment catches Louis completely off guard, a flash of panic in his eyes. He stammers, "Well, why do you think that?" Miliana smiles innocently. "Because you share your knowledge and techniques so openly. Normally, people keep that stuff in the family instead of teaching others, right?" Louis visibly relaxes, sharing a knowing glance with Kara. "Maybe it's because I'm from a commoner background, so I'm a bit different." He pats his head, playing it cool. "Besides, you're all teaching me tons of things too, so we're even. It'd be awesome if we all got stronger together, right?" Faye steps in, her polearm resting on her shoulder. "It's great you all get along, but you should head back and rest now. We have martial arts class tomorrow." She wags her finger at Louis with a mischievous grin. "And don't you dare sneak off to train alone, okay? I'd hate it if someone tried to get ahead of us." With a final "see you tomorrow," the team heads out, leaving Louis alone. After his friends leave, Louis goes to his personal training stash. He opens the bag and sighs. He's almost out of the mental recovery potions he relies on to push his limits. "Gotta go trade for more," he thinks. Wasting no time, he grabs one of the vials. But just as he's about to down the potent liquid, a firm hand grabs his wrist, stopping him cold. It's his guardian, Kylie. "What are you doing?" she asks, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. Her gaze hardens, a glint of concern flashing in her eyes. "I've told you before, if you keep chugging those things, your brain's gonna turn to mush, you know." But for Louis, the risk is worth it. His mind flashes back to his painful past, to a promise he made to a kind nun. "I have to become a grandmaster," he had told her, "so I can get ownership of the orphanage from the association." He remembers the shadowy figures that was about to hunt him. He remembers the Kane's father, a figure of immense power and menace who demanded he prove his worth. He remembers the monsters that were unleashed on him in the forest just days ago. The glowing green potion in his hand represents more than just recovery. It's the fuel for his ambition, the key to protecting those he cares about. His resolve hardens, his eyes filled with grim determination. "I've got things I need to do, and for that, I have to get stronger." Back in the present, he faces Kylie. "I'm careful not to overdo it, so I'll be fine," he insists, gripping the potion. "With these, I can double my training time. I don't have the luxury of taking it slow." He brings the vial to his lips and gulps the potion, ignoring Kylie's frantic attempt to stop him. She asks, "You sure about that?" A wave of crimson energy erupts from Louis' body, enveloping him in an aura of raw, untamed power. The pain is instantaneous and excruciating. Kylie watches in shock, her glasses reflecting the violent energy. Suddenly, her body begins to transform. Her muscles swell, and she's encased in a suit of golden armor, complete with a helmet adorned with bunny ears. She's ready to subdue him if he loses control. He notes that the searing pain is already subsiding, replaced by a strange clarity. That was close. For some reason, my mana suddenly started flowing smoother. Kylie, her transformation receding, is stunned. Her eyes fall upon the table, littered with dozens of empty silver vials. Her voice is a mixture of disbelief and horror. "You've got to be kidding me. Don't tell me you drank all of these by yourself?" Louis scratches the back of his head, avoiding her furious gaze. "Well, yeah." Kylie is absolutely livid. "I just checked the records, and this is your 8th time exchanging for potions this month, so you're basically drinking at least 2 a day. If I want to become a Grand Master as soon as possible, this is the only way!" Louis shouts back, his own frustration boiling over. "And my body hasn't shown any problems." "Becoming a Grand Master isn't that easy," she retorts. "What you need right now isn't drugs, it's basics. Even if you don't feel it, I'm sure your insides are a wreck." She pauses, her expression softening with worry. "And that weird sensation from earlier worries me too. I'll have to talk to the principal." Before Louis can protest, she grabs his wrist in an iron grip. "First, we'll do a medical check to see if there's anything wrong with your body." We open in a lavishly decorated room, where Kylie has brought Louis for a medical checkup with principal. To analyze his condition, the principal carefully takes a blood sample from Louis, letting it drop into a beaker of green liquid. The moment the blood hits the potion, it swirls with a strange, luminescent energy, reacting to Louis' unique mana. Principal studies the results with a perplexed expression. "That's strange," he mutters. "I don't see any signs of mental damage in his brain." Kylie, however, isn't convinced. She explains how Louis has been acting abnormal, spacing out all of a sudden. Her mind flashes back to a terrifying moment during Louis' training, where he was shrouded in a dark, violent aura, radiating a chilling killing intent, like a monster. Principal considers this new information, holding the sample to the light. He suggests it might be a kind of enlightenment, given that Louis' mana actually increased. He stares into the flask, a reflection of Louis in his eye, pondering if this is just another trait of the so-called cursed child. The two adults are deep in thought, mystified by the boy, who seems to defy all known rules of mana. Then Principal gets up, admitting there's still so much they don't understand about Louis' unique constitution. "But," Kylie interjects, pointing a finger, "there is definitely something wrong with his body." Her instincts are screaming that he's in danger. Principal turns, explaining that potionology is still a developing field, and with Louis' special case, it's impossible to be certain. Kylie glares, a sudden thought crossing her mind. Does that mean he has other secrets too? She grits her teeth, the weight of her responsibility heavy on her shoulders. Just what is she supposed to do with this kid? Turning to Louis, she demands an explanation, but he's already one step ahead. "In this world," he begins, "alchemy is basically just fusing materials as they are." He theorizes that some components are clashing with his body. He points to the alchemy's equipment. "So if we remove the unnecessary parts and make a purer drug, we should be able to figure out which ingredient is the problem." The next day, Louis stands proudly before a set of advanced alchemy tools, gathered at his request. Kylie is bewildered. "What are you going to do with all these bottles?" she asks. "You don't usually use things like this to make potions, right?" He just smirks, telling her to watch. And then, something incredible happens. A brilliant golden aura erupts from Potion's reaction. The energy shifts, transforming into the chilling blue of his ice magic as he focuses intensely on the potion before him. "It worked!" he exclaims. With a flick of his wrist, he has done the impossible. On the rack now sit 3 vials, each containing a perfectly separated and purified ingredient from the original potion. Principal is utterly floored, his jaw hanging open in disbelief. "No way!" He snatches up the vials, examining them with the wide eyes of a true scholar witnessing a miracle. "You extracted each ingredient inside the potion one by one. This is legendary!" He's so impressed that he makes Louis an offer on the spot. "How about studying potionology under me? You could become a leading authority, maybe even surpass Lady Miriam someday." For Louis, a commoner with a desperate dream, this is an opportunity he can't refuse. "I'd be honored," he declares, his eyes shining with excitement. Principal throws his head back and laughs, overjoyed. He claps a hand on Louis' shoulder, promising him double the credits for his work. Kylie watches the exchange with a deadpan expression, sweat dropping at the scene. Does this kid even have a weak point? She wonders to herself. Later that night, under the full moon, a new chapter of Louis' training begins. He pores over a book titled Introduction to Potionology, absorbing knowledge at a prodigious rate, his mind racing to connect the dots. As he reads, he has a profound realization. Potions are made from plants. Plants need soil and water, which means earth and water are the symbols of life. And in that moment of enlightenment, something new awakens within him. A seed of pure green energy sprouts from his very core. Suddenly, an immense wave of vibrant green power explodes from his body, flooding the entire laboratory with untamed life force. Principal and Kylie are blown back, staring in shock as Louis is engulfed in the viridian glow. "There it is again," Kylie gasps. "This is enlightenment!" Louis' hair and eyes shift to a brilliant green as he taps into this brand new elemental power. In an instant, the sterile lab is transformed into a wild jungle, with massive, glowing vines and white flowers erupting from the floor and walls. Principal can only stare in utter astonishment, a single bead of sweat rolling down his face. What in the world is this? The sheer scale of the magic is overwhelming, a testament to the boundless potential sleeping within the cursed child. It's nothing short of the power of creation itself. Surrounded by his newly created flora, Louis's green eyes gleam with understanding. It's not anything that grand, he says calmly. I call it the wood element, he declares, a new primal power now at his command. Kylie and the principal are baffled. The wood element? It's a concept completely foreign to their world. A beautiful white flower from one of the vines seems to come to life, its pink tendrils playfully wrapping around Louis's finger. He winks, enjoying his new companion, but the creature's mood is about to take a sharp turn. As Kylie reaches out, curious, the flower's tendril suddenly glows with a menacing red light. It lashes out like a whip, its tip transforming into a fanged, carnivorous mouth, ready to take a bite out of Kylie. Before Kylie could dodge the attack, its mouth clamps down hard on her arm. But the assault isn't over. More tendrils erupt from the flower's base, moving to surround and trap her. One of the piranha-like. But this is Kylie we're talking about. Her eyes flash with golden light. She's not about to be plant food. Unleashing her own formidable power, she channels pure fire magic, blasting the attacking vines with a concussive explosion. The monstrous tendrils are instantly incinerated in the blaze. The explosion rocks the entire room, demonstrating Kylie's raw, destructive power and her ability to handle any threat Louis throws at her even accidentally. The white flower, its aggressive tendrils gone, lets out a sad little whimper, retracting in fear. Kylie brushes off her shoulder, a bit of molten energy sizzling on her shirt. She can't believe how fast Louis is growing, already creating sentient creatures and using them to attack. But Louis isn't finished. That's not all, he says, his expression serious as he raises his bandaged hand. He explains the greatest strength of the wood attribute. A pair of the small, red-mouthed tendrils reappear, but this time, they glow with a gentle, soothing green light. Principal watches, captivated, as he realizes the truth. So the reason recovery potions can heal wounds might be because wood attribute power is involved? Louis nods. The docile flower floats beside him, its tendrils now harmless. He's learning to control his new power on the fly. He explains the fundamental difference between raw plants and potions, and how this new element connects them all. Principal, now understanding the link between composite elements and alchemy, is ecstatic. All right, he declares. From now on, I'll provide the potion materials. Louis smiles gratefully, closing his eyes. Thank you. But the alchemist raises a hand. More importantly, he says, his tone shifting, his expression becoming sharp and calculating. He leans in close, his purple eyes glowing with an intense, almost sinister light. In the human world, strength is just one factor. Do you want the power to change fate? The principal has brought Louis deep into an underground cavern beneath the academy, the perfect place to test his new, untamed power. With the principal observing, Louis begins to practice his newfound wood element, magic, his body suffused with a vibrant green aura as he channels the very essence of life. From the ground, glowing blue vines sprout forth, a testament to the raw creation magic now at his fingertips. The principal watches, utterly captivated by the sight. He can hardly believe his eyes, muttering, "Seriously, no matter how many times I see it, it's unreal." He holds a glowing blue orb, likely a mana catalyst, amazed that Louis can grow such rare magical plants so quickly using this method. Louis, however, feels the strain. He admits that this new power uses way more mana than he imagined. The rarer the plant, the bigger the drain, and for now, he's reached his limit. With a snap of his fingers, the principal agrees. Exactly, he says, a sharp glint in his eye. Everything in this world has a price. But even as Louis's power recedes, the principal continues, a knowing smirk on his face. Compared to others, though, he says, his purple eyes sizing up the boy, the price you pay is pretty cheap. He elaborates, pointing out that Louis didn't just purify potions and reduce their side effects, he's taken it a step further. You even applied wood magic to create brand new potions. The principal gestures towards a cabinet filled with their successful experiments, declaring, "This great achievement, only you could have pulled it off." In the Academy's underground cavern, a special alchemy lab has been set up, housing rows of newly created elixirs, special recovery, mana, body enhancement, and even mental recovery potions. Louis studies their handiwork, a grim determination on his face. "All right," he says, turning to face his mentor. "Time to test how well they work." The principal grins, sensing what's coming. "If you want a shortcut to getting stronger," he advises, "fighting a strong opponent is best." He takes a few steps back, creating distance between them as he makes a bold offer. "So, how about trying them out on me?" Louis's eyes light up with a battle-hungry grin. This is exactly what he wanted. "I couldn't ask for anything better," he exclaims, clutching his newly made concoctions. "Don't hold back, okay?" With that final warning, Louis uncorks a vial and chugs the entire thing down in one go. The empty glass tubes clatter to the ground as the powerful elixir takes effect almost instantly. "Here I come!" he roars as a violent crimson energy erupts from his body, his eyes glowing with terrifying power. The raw power explodes outwards, a clash of red and blue energy as the test battle begins. Kylie, who has been watching from the side, can only stare in disbelief. She crosses her arms, a bead of sweat on her temple, as she watches the cursed child unleash his might. "He really is a total monster," she mutters, a mix of awe and concern in her voice. The scene shifts. Under the pale moonlight, we see the academy looming in the distance, a silent witness to the secrets kept within its walls. We see Louis, his body aching and bruised. He dries himself off after a bath, grumbling about the principal. He seriously didn't pull any punches. He sighs, exhausted. "Without those new potions I made, I'd probably be bedridden for a month." He plops down, wondering what kind of crazy new elixir he should develop next. As he ponders, he's suddenly startled by a presence in his room. It's a purple-haired boy sitting quietly on the floor next to a spilled potion. Louis is shocked. "Kara?" he stammers, recognizing the boy. He sits there with a deadpan expression, the remnants of a potion spilled beside him. Louis nervously tries to explain the mess. "Ah, the potion I got from the principal." But the principal, appearing as a cute chibi, cuts in with a brilliant idea. For Louis' safety, they'll say he was the one who developed the potions, while Louis handles the profits. Kara just sits there, arms crossed, pouting at the suggestion, shaking his head in denial. Suddenly, Kara gets right in Louis' face, staring him down. "Kara?" he sputters again, completely taken off guard. He gets even closer, examining his face intently, much to his flustered surprise. Pointing directly at him, Kara speaks with an authority that belies his age. "The potions! You made them!" It's not a question, but a statement. Louis panics, waving his hands frantically. He's a terrible liar, and Kara sees right through it. Her finger pokes him accusingly, and Louis can only make a face, knowing he's been caught. He finally gives in with a sigh. "I really can't hide anything from you. How'd you figure it out?" Kara casually brushes his hair back, revealing a sharp, cunning intellect. "The principal is old-fashioned," she declares, essentially calling him too traditional to invent something so revolutionary. Louis grins, impressed. "You see through everything, huh?" He admits the truth but makes him promise not to tell anyone, as he hates trouble. Kara then approaches him, straightening the collar of his shirt with a strangely intimate gesture. He hands him a piece of paper. "What's this?" Louis asks, taking the document. He unfolds it to see a formal-looking document from the Candice Trading Company. It's a contract. "A contract?" he says, his eyes widening as he reads the text. "And with insanely good terms, too." While he's distracted, Kara quickly scoops up the spilled potion from the floor. She carefully pours the recovered liquid into a beaker, his movements precise and practiced. The beaker now contains the diluted but still valuable potion Louis created. Holding the contract, Kara points to the beaker. He explains the deal. By letting her company handle the sales, they can obscure the potion's true origin. "Hide it and protect it!" Louis stares at the beaker, understanding the implications. "I see. By letting the company handle selling my potions, no one will find out I'm the creator, right?" Kara then breaks down the business model with a wisdom far beyond his years. The profits will be split, with Candice taking a share as collateral. It's a win-win. Louis profits, his identity stays secret, and Candice ensures his safety. Louis is impressed. With the Candice Trading Company's extensive sales routes, it would be nearly impossible to trace the product back to him. "It's a good deal," he admits, "but I've got a few conditions." He knows his invention is valuable, and he's not about to give it away for nothing. First, to avoid drawing unwanted attention, they must weaken the potions' effects before selling them. Second, and most importantly, Candice Trading Company has to support the Rashira orphanage. If he agrees to those two terms, he's in. Kara doesn't hesitate. He snatches the contract out of his hand, a sign of his immediate agreement. He quickly signs the document, formalizing their new partnership. With a sparkle in his eye, he proudly presents the signed contract. The deal is done. Louis takes the contract back, a satisfied smile on his face. He shakes on it with his new business partner, impressed by his shrewdness. As expected of a merchant's son, he remarks. They seal the deal with a firm handshake, a new alliance forged between two young prodigies. Louis then leans in conspiratorially. "Oh, and I've got some advice as your business partner," he whispers, a playful glint in his eye. He puts a hand on Kara's shoulder, getting very close, as if sharing a huge secret. Kara looks back, a little surprised by the sudden proximity. "Got it?" he asks, finishing his whispered advice. He then waves goodbye. "I'll have the potions ready by tomorrow, so you get some proper rest too." Louis heads out of the room, leaving Kara to ponder their new arrangement. Kara watches him go, his expression unreadable. After he's gone, he walks toward the door, and then, in a move that changes everything, he reaches back and unties the ribbon in his hair. With a magical shimmer, his hair lengthens, cascading down his back. The boyish Kara is gone, revealing a beautiful young girl. Just then, a pair of messenger birds fly in through the open window. They soar into the room, bringing with them an important message. In a puff of smoke, the birds transform. Appearing in their place are two intimidating figures, Kara's loyal, bird-masked servants. The demi-humans land gracefully, their taloned feet making soft tapping sounds on the wooden floor. The pink-haired servant peeks around the corner, her glowing red eyes scanning the room for her master. They approach the main door, standing guard as their mistress prepares to address them. The two servants creep along the wall, silent and deadly, their loyalty to Kara absolute. One of them steps forward, ready to receive orders, but the pink-haired one can't contain her excitement and is eager to see her. She rushes forward, overcome with emotion, clearly having missed her master. But this breach of etiquette is not tolerated. Kara brings a hand down swiftly on the servant's head. The servant cries, clutching her head in pain as she's knocked to the floor. "Kara hit me again!" she whines. She continues to cry, a blush of embarrassment on her face. "I finally managed to sneak in here. At least let me cuddle a little." Her more stoic blue-haired companion steps in. "My lord, I'm sorry, but keep it short. We must leave before anyone notices we're here." As her two servants bicker, Kara emerges from the bath naked, towel around her neck. She looks every bit the powerful and mysterious leader. She covers herself up with the towel, then reaches out to contact paper, kept on the table. She hands over the contract to her servants. But the pink-haired servant can't help but complain. Grabbing the contract Louis signed. "What is this? Have you played around so much you lost your mind?" She fumes, reading the terms. "This is taking favoritism way too far. What's so amazing about that kid anyway?" Her companion, however, is sweating bullets, holding up the business plan. "If this plan works, Candace Trading Company will be one of the top firms in the East area. My lord, you're a genius." Kara sits down, unfazed by their reactions. "It's not me," she says calmly, her eyes closed. "He's the one who came up with it." Her servants are stunned into silence. "What? How can a 13-year-old kid?" The pink-haired one can't believe it. Candace looks at them, her purple eyes filled with a deep understanding. He has potential. But her servants are worried. "But what if he betrays you and supports a different heir to the throne? That's where I need a favor from you two," Kara replies, her tone turning serious. Her servants immediately snap to attention, ready to do her bidding. The pink-haired one is ecstatic. "Just say the word Lady Kara." Kara looks at them, her expression cold and calculating, as she reveals the next step of her plan. "I want the Rashira orphanage under my control." She dismisses them, her mind already on her next move. "He's too kind, you're dismissed." She waves them away, but her servants are still grumbling about the contract, as they transform back into birds and fly away. Kara walks over to her balcony, gazing out at the full moon. Her true ambitions are far greater than just running a trading company. With midterms coming up, she knows she needs to accelerate her plans. She looks out at the night sky, a single name on her lips, Louis Kirill. A small, determined smile plays on her lips. Show me just how far your potential can go. That's all for this chapter. If you enjoyed the recap, make sure you smash that like button. It really helps out the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next explosive episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.